कि इंडिया जो है it is not culturally uniform. India is diverse. India is diverse with regard to languages. India is diverse with regard to religion, food habits, music, customs, social. इतने सारे हैं. Anthropology में हम ये नहीं कहेंगे कि accept every practice blindly, every practice of every culture blindly. No, ऐसा नहीं. Anthropologists generally say that tolerance should generally be the best approach. If you're an anthropologist who's going to try to study and understand a particular culture, first you have to understand the situation. Once you have this conceptual clarity, you see the kind of quality that comes in your answers that I'm going to give you feedback on. The stack of answers that comes from your foundation should be itna. Okay, you will beat every single other person. Okay, who's going to be a competitor? You can then say, okay, मतलब ये कर लो, then you can compete with me. Every culture basically has their own sense of moral values. Okay, you can personally believe that animal suffering is wrong. Veganism is ethically better. Okay, but this is moral, it is an ethical position. Anthropologists basically say, even saying thank you jo hai, it is actually cultural. Some societies say it frequently. Okay, some societies almost never say it. Okay, inside the family, when was the last time you said the word dhanyavad? Let's move to today's topic, which is going to be ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Okay, ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Again, we are going to study this exactly like, how we studied the previous topic. Okay, what is ethnocentrism? What is ethnocentrism? Ethnocentrism, इस word को break it down. Generally, if you take a word, right, you try to break them down into, its parts. ठीक है, etymology को देखो, and in etymology essentially means like break it into parts and see what exactly it means. So ethnocentrism का मतलब क्या है, right? Now some of you might have heard of this particular term, but ethnocentrism, ethno का मतलब क्या है? If I break this down into ethno and centrism, in fact ism also is something that you can easily break down. What is ethno? Ethno का मतलब है it is people, it is culture, it is nation. Okay, what is centrism or centrum or center? It means middle. Okay, and ism का मतलब क्या है? It is your idea or belief. Idea or belief. So what does it mean, right? So now you can understand. You're placing, if somebody is placing one's own culture at the center of everything and judging everybody else using their own culture as a standard. Okay, so I'll repeat this once again. What is being done here, right? Placing one's own culture, one's own people, one's own nation, right, at the center and judging everybody else using their own culture, their own nation, their own people as the main standard here. That is your ethnocentrism. So ethno का मतलब है it is people, ethno का मतलब है it is culture, ethno का मतलब है it is the ethnic group. Center का मतलब है it is the middle, it is a central point. And ism का मतलब है it is a belief, it is the ideology, it is the idea. So ethnocentrism means placing one's own culture at the center of everything. Very important that you understand this. I'll repeat this again. Ethnocentrism means, you're judging others' cultures using the standards of one's own culture. Meaning, my culture becomes the measuring scale. Exactly, I'm looking at everybody else by judging how similar are you to me, how different are you to me, why are you dissimilar? Oh, you're nice and similar. You get the picture, right? Everything is centered around me, my people, my culture, my nation, and so on. So ethnocentrism, how does it essentially वो manifest कैसे होता है? Even the simplest of sentences, that a person says, my food is normal, everybody else का food. My food is normal का मतलब क्या है? ठीक है? That essentially means कि others का food is basically abnormal. Is their food kind of weird? Right? Unka food ka choices is basically weird or abnormal. Is that what it is? Our religion is superior to somebody else. What is that? Ethnocentrism. Their customs are kind of backward. Yeah, yahan pe backward to whom? You're saying backward in comparison to me. Explicitly, they're not saying it. But what does it mean when you're saying कि something is backward? ठीक है, backward का मतलब है there is like an average and average के पीछे हो आप. That's exactly what it means, है कि नहीं? ठीक है, our language sounds proper. It sounds nice. ठीक है, or just somebody saying कि that accent sounds funny. What does that mean? What is so funny about that particular accent? You get the picture, right? All of these things are, subtle manifestations of ethnocentrism. Very important. Another key point I'll just tell you, most ethnocentric people जो है, they're not bad people. They don't even realize that they are ethnocentric. है कि नहीं? Being ethnocentric is not something that, I don't think great about other people. Okay, coming out and saying it out like this. It is often subconscious. It is what? It is subconscious. It means कि somewhere deep here, there's an automatic thinking that you're not even considering. कि is that good? Is it bad? Should I be thinking like this? Should I not be thinking like this? आप सोच नहीं रहे हो, right? Why could this happen? It happens because from childhood, we have been growing up believing and seeing our customs. So that seems a lot more normal to us, right? Our customs are normal. For example, there is a child who grows up eating rice with hands, touching elders' feet for respect and blessings के लिए, removing slippers before entering home. This is something that I used to always feel it is very, very normal. In many cultures, this is not common. ठीक है? How do you walk without your slippers? ठीक है, at home. Maybe it's too cold or whatever it is. You get the picture, right? So, if there is a child growing up in this particular home, यही है उनका normal human behavior, right? मतलब उनका behavior ही नहीं, this is what all humans behave like this. Another child जो होंगे, that child might grow up differently. For example, different customs होंगे, and उनके लिए वो different customs will feel strange. And that is how ethnocentrism begins. ठीक है? Very naturally. Have you looked at another culture? आप बताओ. Have you looked at another culture and said कि क्या कर रहे हो? So strange. Have you thought like this? ठीक है? Almost everyone has. Even if you think, nahi, I am like, so non-judgmental. I never evaluate or judge anybody else and so on. This is so normal. Okay? Because, and if you feel that you've never done it, good. Because it is subconscious. Okay? You don't know that you're doing it, but it is happening. Okay? Why is it happening? Because humans generally, we look at the world naturally, right? Through our own cultural lens. Anthropology is how you're being exposed to new cultures. Right? Literally, you have to study different cultures to get what you want, to get a score and become an officer. So anthropology teaches you to become more conscious of this bias that till now you did not have this, knowledge about. Okay? You were not, cognizant of the fact that there is this bias somewhere deep inside. Right? If anybody felt that, nee, I've never judged anybody else. I don't evaluate other people and their cultures and their choices. If you felt this, it is good because that is a great example for why it is subconscious, because everybody does it. Understood? Very important. Now, who first used this term? इस term को किसने coin किया था? There is an American scholar. His name is W.G. Sumner. R, ठीक है, Sumner, ठीक है, in fact, put the full name as well. Okay, W.G. Sumner, अगर it's fine, ठीक है. In 1906, in his book called as Folkways, he's an American sociologist. He basically said, people जो है, they often see their own group as the center of everything. I'll repeat this again. What's he saying? वो कह रहे हैं कि people जो है, they actually see their own group as a center of everything, right? And judge all others using their own cultural standards. So he's basically saying ethnocentrism जो है, if you think like this, which everybody does, he says ethnocentrism basically creates a lot of pride. Pride might be good. Okay, you should be proud of who you are, but it also creates a vanity. Vanity का मतलब क्या है? It is pride नहीं, it is excessive pride. ठीक है, excess इतना excess कि मतलब it becomes negative. ठीक है, vanity is not a positive word, pride is a positive word. Vanity जो है, you take it so far कि it becomes that excess, इतना extra हो गया कि now it is negative. ठीक है, it is not just a positive feeling, it has become a feeling of superiority. It has become a feeling of superiority, right? You don't want to be superior to be anybody. You want to consider yourself to be equal to everybody. Is that right? And then, it is also something jahan pe you look at outsiders with a level of, as I said, superiority, with a level of a contempt, with a level of disrespect towards them, because you put yourself as higher. This higher and lower jo hai, essentially is ethnocentrism. He just coined the word. Is that clear? But it is the later scholars. It is the later scholars It is the later scholars who expanded upon this idea. Okay, so you have a scholar named as Theodore Adorno. By the way, not every scholar that I write here is that important. Okay, you will understand, you'll get a feeling, but I'm just, because I'm using academic ideas of scholars. Okay, so what he did is that he's taking the word ethnocentrism and he's linking it to few things. Okay, what is those few things? He's basically saying that, you're linking it to, let's say, prejudice. Prejudice against others. Okay, you're linking it to some kind of authoritarian personality. You're having some kind of hostility towards others. And so on. I don't have space, and at the bottom I'm not able to write. Then you have other sort of scholars who basically come in, Henry Thachfeld and all of that. They develop this idea into in-group and out-group. Just be group mein aap ho, in fact we'll see this a little later, whichever group mein aap ho, that is your in-group. Whichever group mein aap nahi ho, that is your out-group. Okay? Out-group are basically other. So it results in the othering of people. In your mind, let's say that, you are Indian, you think of, Are yaar, hum Indians ek. Okay, which might be good, but it's like, it's also othering some people. Or let's say you're from Rajasthan and, you're othering the UP ke log. You get the picture, south and north, and so on. So humans have this innate tendency to naturally favor their own group. Isko hum kehte hain this in-group bias. We feel like, there is a loyalty here, there is a inclusion here, there is a sense of belonging here, right? We say ki, CSK won, RCB won. Okay, and when that happens, okay, you feel ki we won, okay, yeah, we lost. What does that mean? Is RCB you? Is CSK you? Nahi, that's a different company. They have their own sort of shareholders and buyers and whatever it is, but you feel ki that is your group. You understand that, right? And somebody else is they. So it becomes your we versus them. Is this clear? So there are many who take this particular idea and sort of build it. Okay, they build on it further. So humans always have this tendency, jahan pe we create this us versus them, right? Us versus them. We look at this world through this lens of us versus them. You get the picture, right? If you have to see two different issues that are going or happening, in your mind, this is us. I'm supporting this particular group. This group is always this troublemaker. आपको लगता है यहाँ पे लोग जो होंगे, they look at the same thing. This group is always like a victim, and this group is always like bullying them or something. You understand, no? So that is why you have to understand that there is a very subconscious nature. Mein, we all have this sense of ethnocentrism that creates that in-group and out-group. There is a bias against outsiders. There is a loyalty and a feeling of belongingness with your own sort of group. So now we will actually see, we isko thoda sa expand karenge, understand karenge. We will see how anthropology itself in the beginning years was an ethnocentric, it became ethnocentric in the way they analyzed different cultures. Is this clear? Even the beginning of anthropology, the scholars, the founding fathers of anthropology were indeed ethnocentric. Right? And it is the subsequent scholars in anthropology who try to remove this ethnocentric bias in it. Okay? Especially, right now, we are in chapter number 2. Okay? In chapter number 6, pehla wala chapter, you will see classical evolutionists. Classical evolutionists. It's a group of scholars like your E.B. Tyler, like your Lewis Henry Morgan, right? Like your James Fraser. यही है हमारे syllabus में. So we'll basically stick with them. They actually believe that all societies basically move in one fixed path. मतलब evolution कैसे होता है? They all basically move in one particular path. Anybody who is not like those Europeans or the Americans, ठीक है? The Western society, the peak में थे 1800s में, right? But they had the lead in industrial revolution. They had the lead when it comes to in modern world they had best universities and so on. They felt that they were like the the most advanced group in everything, and they're looking at the rest of the world ki kitna far behind you are. Okay? If we are the advanced groups, okay, you are primitive, you are more primitive, you're less primitive. Literally, that was anthropology in the very beginning as well. So everybody basically evolves in this unilinear line, a singular line mein. There is one fixed path of evolution, and the most advanced in everything is going to be your Western society. Is that clear? In fact, even if they're looking at, let's say, religion, religion, agar aap wo dekhenge, people who have different kind of beliefs in souls and all of that, so backward, so primitive. Animism ka matlab hai ki belief in spirits. There are spirits living in trees, there are spirits of rivers, there are spirits in mountains, there are spirits in animals. These are thoughts that we have it in many different religions, Hinduism being one of them. ठीक है, Hinduism is all, ठीक है, but they are of this belief that this is extremely primitive thoughts in comparison to, you know, the more advanced thoughts of the Europeans. And then they're like, oh, polytheism, okay, so you're fine, okay, you're not believing in spirits, okay, you're only believing in many gods. You're wrong in the way that you're believing in many gods. Okay, for example, not only Hindu traditions, ancient Greek religion basically had many gods. वो भी हम देखेंगे. Okay, to some extent, not that's not to some extent you will see. वहाँ पे you have multiple gods. वो correct नहीं है. Christianity is right. Hindu traditions, too many deities. ठीक है? Okay, somewhere backward, but not as backward as them. You understand now, why are you trying to analyze a culture, describe a culture, explain a culture, understand a particular culture by saying kitna backward, kitna primitive, kitna advanced. Okay? And they had themselves, whatever they believed in, that was always, you know, belief in one God. Okay? That is, in fact, belief in one God is Islam and Christianity. But what they are saying is that Christianity is the most advanced, most rational sort of religion. It's the only right sort of religion, the right sort of God and so on. So even the early academic scholars of anthropology, the founders of, you know, anthropology, they assumed that Western monotheistic societies, monotheistic religion were at the highest stage of evolution and everybody else is just about ki backward, yeah, very backward, very primitive, or, you know, बहुत primitive, you know, that kind of thing. You understand, right? Tribal society, so far back. Okay, ancient Greek society, this much back. Okay, you know, some other kind of society somewhere here, right? But, you know, only one group belongs here, and that is Europeans. Why was it? Because European culture in 1800s, right? They were kind of advanced, okay? And they considered themselves to be the standard of civilization. Okay, and that is that. So it's a very important criticism initially. But every academic field will figure out what is wrong with the previous idea so that we can improve upon it next, right? And then we realize that different societies solve problems differently and they tend to have different cultures. They might have different forms of religion and so on and so forth. Is this clear? Right? Okay, and that is that. Now understood what is ethnocentrism? If I can show you some pictures now, and I will, okay? So those of you who get, look at your face, okay? And if you don't want to see it, it'll be on this side, I guess, or this side, it'll be on this side, okay? Food. Ethnocentrism vis-a-vis food. Okay? A lot of people you ask, what is your favorite food? They'll say ki ghar ka khana. Totally fine. I'm sure that everybody's mother, everybody's father is probably the best cook. Okay? But to say that any other kind of food tastes awful, bland, ye, wo, it's, you know, you're essentially comparing. Okay? And, you know, you might have, so let's discuss food habits and let's take a look at, and it's one of the strongest ideas of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentric beliefs agar aapko dekhna hoga, okay, the best way to see this is through food habits, right? So you can see a meat shop here. In many countries, whether it's Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Philippines, Indonesia, China, Ghana, Vietnam, so many different countries, rat meat is eaten very regularly, right? Some of you might have seen it, okay? You know, and some of you, you're probably seeing it for the very first time. Some of you might be hearing it for the very first time. Okay, and now many of you, okay, urban, middle class, Indian reaction might be, oh, disgusting, sir, please move to the next slide. Okay, it only gets better. Okay, you might be thinking, oh, disgusting. Take a look at your face. You take a picture of your face while you take a look at this. Okay, you will understand, right? So some of you said, "Ki, I'm never judgmental." Now you can take a look and see that your face tells you that your, you know, wo subconscious nature mein, wo a little bit of ethnocentrism is there. Okay, it's fine. You know, everybody has it. It is about not letting that influence the way you study a particular society. That is what anthropology recommends that you do. Okay, so anthropology mein, you're not thinking, ki, you know, is that good? Is it bad? Okay, you know, you're not judging them, but you're asking the right questions. Why do certain countries, why do certain people, why do certain cultures eat rats? Now understand this carefully. Sochiye, in many agricultural societies, rats jo hai, they are easily available. It is protein rich and it is affordable. Especially, and I'm not talking about the rats that you see in these urban areas, in those gutters and ditches. Wo rats nahi hai. These are field rats. Field rats ka matlab hai, before you get your grains, somebody else eats them first. Those are your field rats. Okay? The freshest grains jo milenge in the fields, okay? It is these rats that go and eat it. Okay? So please don't think these sewer rats, okay? The gutter rats, okay? Field rats, you know, they often feed on the crops even before they get to you. So some communities they consider them to be edible. Okay? Now, according to, you know, there are many scholars. For example, there is Grant Singleton. right, from the International Rice Research Institute. ठीक है, so you have such institutes. Rats have apparently historically been a traditional food source in many Asian societies. ठीक है, इन मेनी एशियन सोसाइटीज द डाइवर्सिटी ऑफ जितने खाना हम जो खाते हैं, जितने मीट हम जो खाते हैं ना, इट हैज कम डाउन अ लॉट मोर टुडे. ठीक है, नाउ इट इज ओनली पोर्क, इट इज ओनली बीफ, इट इज ओनली चिकन, इट इज ओनली व्हाट इज द अदर कॉमन मीट्स, राइट, फिश. ठीक है, मे बी एक दो आई माइट बी मिसिंग, राइट. सो दोज आर द थिंग्स, बट प्रीवियसली देयर यूज्ड टू बी अ लॉट मोर डाइवर्सिटी. For poor communities especially, food choices जो है, it is not about what tastes better, right? Although it might be, we don't know what food, unless you eat it, you will not know. ठीक है, but the food choices are not based on कि what is tasty. Food choice, especially poor communities में, it is actually based on उनका environment क्या है, उनका context क्या है, उनका economy क्या है, उनका availability क्या है. It is not taste is a luxury, guys. ठीक है, टेस्ट का जो है, टू बी एबल टू these are all only in the last 100 years you're able to eat based on your taste. What do I feel like eating is a thought that would not come to your grandparents or your great grandparents unless you're in the top 0.0001% of the families. You understand? ठीक है, so suppose if a chicken cost कितना, how much do chickens cost? 250, 300, the last time in the previous class when I asked, it was like around 300. So let's assume that. But locally available rats in the fields, they might be free for those poor families. So the poor families adapt according to उनका क्या situation है, उनका क्या context है. 300 रुपया could actually be more than their daily labor charge. ठीक है, now of course you will say कि MG and REG is supposed to pay so and so, and 200 rupees अगर आपको मिलेगा in certain pockets of the country, ठीक है, it is your family का income. That cannot go for just for one aspect of your food. So anthropology में ना आप पढ़ रहे हो, you have to understand culture क्या था. Food choice is basically culture, and that is basically an adaptation. It fulfills needs. It helps in survival. It's not about moral superiority or inferiority based on आप क्या खा रहे हो. ठीक है, अगर survival difficult है, food habits change होंगे. Yes, ठीक है, human beings are known to adapt constantly, and that is anthropology. And now this is not only in Asia. There are so many other kind of examples. For example, okay, I told you it only keeps getting better. Okay, so anyway, I've given you a disclaimer अगर नहीं देखना है तो ठीक है. Okay, but again, take a picture of your face. Hopefully by the end of a foundation, it will not bother you so much, right? Because you would have trained yourself to be less ethnocentric and more another term which you have not seen yet. ठीक है, Africa and rats अगर आप देखोगे in different parts of Africa में, especially in Nigeria में बहुत होता है ये. There is an African giant rat. ठीक है, African giant rat is considered to be, it's a traditional food. It is traditionally eaten. ठीक है, so मतलब आप relatives वगैरह आ रहे हैं, सब कुछ फंक्शन वगैरह है, कुछ फेस्टिवल है, कुछ सेलिब्रेशन है. ठीक है, many ethnic groups के लिए it is African giant rat that is on the menu. अगर नहीं है तो something is missing. Maybe it's not that big a day, or maybe something is off. समझ रहे हो ना? बट आउटसाइडर्स के लिए, यू एंड मी के लिए, वी रिएक्ट मोर विद इमोशंस. ठीक है, बट वहां के लोकल्स के लिए, उनके सोसाइटी के अंदर से अगर आप देखोगे, फ्रॉम देयर पर्सपेक्टिव अगर आप देखोगे, रैट्स माइट बी अ कॉमन प्रोटीन सोर्स. इसमें क्या है टाइप का थॉट होगा. ठीक है, इट माइट बी पार्ट ऑफ देयर कॉमन क्विजीन, इट इज पार्ट ऑफ देयर ट्रेडिशन, इट इज पार्ट ऑफ देयर लोकल इकोनॉमी एंड सो ऑन. सो दैट इज ऑल्सो इंपॉर्टेंट. सो एंथ्रोपोलॉजी में ना, एंथ्रोपोलॉजी इज आस्किंग व्हाई should one society's food be considered normal and another society's food be considered as disgusting? I'll repeat this question. ठीक है, so anthropology में it is not about being judgmental. Why is one society का food choices be considered normal whereas some other society का choices can be considered as disgusting? कौन डिसाइड करता है ये? क्यों डिसाइड करते हैं? उनका कल्चर डिसाइड करता है ना. ठीक है, my food seems very normal because it's on my plate since my childhood, and इनका culture might decide कि what is on their plate might be what is most common. See, बहुत in India, right, especially the sea, the coastal region में अगर आप देखोगे, many Indians basically happily eat these prawns and crabs, especially the coastal belt. ठीक है, outsiders के लिए seafood it might be very different. ठीक है, in fact, especially some even say कि these crabs and lobsters and prawns, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, these are bottom feeders. ठीक है, it is like the insects of the ocean world. How do you eat that? समझ रहे हो? ठीक है, but that will not be there for the sea dweller, like the coastal members. ठीक है, because that is what has been on their plates since childhood. That is what is normal to them. You get the picture, right? Similarly, Western societies ke liye, they eat pork and they eat beef. I think that is very, very common, right? But to many communities, Indian communities, to look at these things, or to the Muslim community, for those the pork or the Jews, right? They will look at those plates and be like, they reject karo usko. How do you guys eat beef? How do you guys eat pork? Why do you do this? You get the picture, right? So food habits जो है वो cultural है, ठीक है? There is no universal कि this is right, this is wrong. Okay, so food ka disgust jo hai, that is also culturally learned. So if anybody had that face jahan pe your face is grimacing ki kitne der ke liye dekhna padega, theek hai, ye wala hai, it is actually culturally learned. Is that clear? So you as a member of your society has learned to think that anything jo aapke plate mein common nahi hai, जो आपके प्लेट में अभी तक नहीं आया है, that has to be considered as something that is disgusting. So आपका disgust जो है, आपका जो facial expression जो था, that was actually culturally learned. Is that right? Understood? Food is a great example to show ethnocentrism. ठीक है? Frog legs. ठीक है? Frog legs. In many countries like France, China, अगर आप देखोगे, frog legs are not just food. Frog legs are a delicacy. It's like a special expensive food जो एक दिन, if you get a big bonus at work, ठीक है, or some very good positive thing has happened in your life, right? Then you decide कि hey, आज मनाते हैं, सेलिब्रेट करते हैं, जाके हम ऐसा ऑर्डर करेंगे, इतना स्पेशल एक्सपेंसिव फूड ऑर्डर करेंगे. इनफैक्ट व्हाई डोंट वी जस्ट ऑर्डर फ्रॉग लेग्स, ठीक है? एंड फ्रॉग लेग्स जो है ना, कैम्बोडिया, थाईलैंड, वियतनाम, इंडोनेशिया, ठीक है, इटली, कोरिया, रोमानिया, मतलब देखो, ठीक है, पोर्चुगल, यूएस, बहुत सारे प्लेसेस में यू फाइंड देम टू बी एन इंपॉर्टेंट फूड. यहाँ पे इफ यू सी दिस हियर, राइट, सो दिस इज Indonesia, Jakarta, right? And again, you can see different place, different sort of ways in which they have just kept it. Somebody in Paris, if they eat frog legs, people might say, ki, ooh, sophisticated Parisian French cuisine. Okay? If some other kind of society is eating them, and it might be seen as unusual. Okay? It might be seen as primitive. Okay? कुछ भी खाते हैं. You understand, no? वो क्या है? Double standard. ठीक है, this double standard again is ethnocentrism, very important. ठीक है, but actually, in fact, nutritionally speaking, apparently frog legs are very rich. Protein है, vitamin है, potassium है, omega-3 है, and many other kind of things that I probably don't remember. ठीक है, scientifically, it is simply food. आपके belly में जो जाता है, ठीक है, your food does not know कि वो क्या है. So your stomach does not know कि वो क्या है. It only knows कि is it this part protein, this is part ये, it's part micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and so on. But emotionally, अगर आप देखोगे, culture is the one that is changing your perception of ooh tasty, ooh nice, and ooh disgusting. Is that clear? If it is French cuisine, it might be called as classy, but the same thing, if a tribal member in some rural parts of the country might be having it, then it might be mocked. It might be seen as disgusting. Is that clear? Because, power shapes, what we see as prestige. Okay, prestigious culture, वहाँ पे, ठीक है, but tribal अगर है, तो हम ऐसे नहीं देखते. Okay, very important anthropological insight. In fact, ये अगर आप देखोगे, इंडिया में भी these kind of things are there, right? So, in fact, this was an article that I had seen. India may, we say it is unity in diversity, right? So to a great extent, we say India is a country that is so diverse. And in fact, वो diversity, unity in diversity जो हम कहते हैं, a lot of that diversity comes actually from where? ठीक है, we have 700 plus tribes, scheduled tribes. Okay, उससे भी ज़्यादा tribes हैं जो recognize नहीं है constitutionally speaking. Most of the diversity जो है, it is actually coming from, the tribals, right? And tribals. In fact, if you see this, in pockets of India, we tend to have, even dog food being consumed. There are these Naga tribal bodies that are saying, and they have said, and they made this, that, please stop, deciding what is right. What is the right kind of food that has to be on a particular plate. Stop judging us, right? We don't judge you, right? जब हम आते हैं, outside of the Northeast and come and sit there and, we eat whatever you provide. ठीक है, whether it is normal, abnormal to us or not, doesn't matter. We are not judging you. ठीक है, but you don't judge us and tell us what is the right meat and so on. Is this clear? This COVID के time में था, there was Nagaland का state का cabinet जो है, they basically banned, saying कि okay, let's from now on, no commercial import of dogs, no dog markets, no sale of dog meat. And immediately many people supported the ban because, of course, I'm a dog lover, right? But, I'm a dog lover and hence dogs should not be eaten, but I might not be a pig lover, I might not be a chicken lover, I might not be anything. Why this partiality towards some dogs and some animals and not some others? And ये support जो था, it was by animal rights activists, it's by urban middle class people जो वहां पे जा ही नहीं रहे, ठीक है, and these social media के warriors, keyboard warriors as we call them. At the same time, you have the Naga tribal groups, and they love their culture, okay, and they want to defend their culture. They actually protested this ban. Q. Some Naga communities के लिए dog meat has been part of our tradition. You keep your tradition and you're eating your food. You know, why can we not keep our food tradition? Why can we not have our local cuisine? Why can we not basically have our cultural practice? You want to come here and attend that Naga festival. What is that called? The Great Hornbill Wala festival. And then you want to see all of these things. Oh, it's exotic. You want to take pictures. You want to put it on your social media. But, you know, you're going to, you know, judge us based on what we eat. In fact, there was NSC and IM, Isaac Muiwa wala a group. They made a statement that why ban dog meat without understanding Naga culture, right? So just doing this is that you don't want to understand our culture. Okay? And again, they're making this larger point. Ki India jo hai, it is not culturally uniform. India is diverse. India is diverse with regard to languages. India is diverse with regard to religion, food habits, music, customs, social. Itne sare hain. Okay? So different communities live differently. And Naga statement is in fact said that Nagas, the Nagas and the mainland Indians, they have different histories, they have different food cultures, they have different ethnic backgrounds. So whether we agree or disagree, anthropologically, their argument is more about cultural autonomy, cultural freedom, right? And not judging, right? We don't judge you for the animals that you kill, you know, in order to have a good meal. Okay? Why do the same with us? Why not extend the same courtesy to us? Why not let the communities decide their own cultural practices, their food practices? Let's not make it an emotional point, is their statement. Is this clear? Let's not bring backwardness and so on. Very powerful statement, in fact, right? So in fact, articles like this actually show you anthropologically how important it is. Okay, ethnocentrism jo hai, it is not just like one statement given by so and so, and this is basically what is ethnocentrism. You've got to be able to see every single day, every news article, every day, a newspaper is going to give you this subconscious prejudice, right? And so on. If one society eats crows, another avoids crows. One society eats dogs, okay? Another basically worships dogs. Okay? Who decides who's normal and what is normal, what is abnormal? Okay? Unka culture should basically decide. That is the anthropological point here. Okay? So as an anthropologist, you cannot study, you cannot analyze, you cannot understand a particular culture when you think that you are more superior, right? And they are inferior. Kaise hoga? Is that clear? Hopefully you've gotten a good understanding. Take a reach of mainland Indians to civilized Northeast hasn't gone. Dog meat man is another example, and so on. Okay? That is that. Eating alone is not sufficient. Okay? You've got to know how to eat. Is this normal? What do you guys think? This seems like a whole, a complete paper. किसके लिए हमें क्या खाना है? Right? So this one for what? This one for what? Okay, ये वाला for what? ये वाला for what? This one, konsa, you get the picture, right? Okay? If you see, Western societies actually always believed, because, let's give it, right? Ancient India was so far advanced in comparison to West tha hi nahi wahan pe, what they were doing. Okay? Medieval world mein you could see the Arabs and, who basically took our zeros, and they were good at marketing, right? They were good at trading and so on. Okay? In Western society for the modern world, right? Especially after Renaissance and so on. So Western societies in early modern period mein, they felt that their dining etiquette, their cutlery use, unka jo table manners hai, unka clothing jo hai, unka lifestyle jo hai, they were signs of advanced civilization. They were signs of most advanced civilization. Okay? And people who ate with their hands were considered to be primitive. Okay? They were mocked. Guys, why are you eating with your hands when you have all this help? Okay? You find the right one to eat the right thing. That is only for people who probably have so much time. Okay? And, so many dishes to do after eating. And anybody who is not eating like this is uncivilized. Anybody who is not eating like this is primitive. But anthropology, what should you ask? Why? Who decided that this is normal? This is normal to you. We're not saying this is abnormal. Although I kind of feel it is abnormal. Hai ki nahi? Right? Okay? Well, this cannot be done on a daily basis. Right? Unless you're a colonizer and you have the colony ke log who will sit and set this up for you and wash it. मतलब उसका भी एक context है, you understand this, right? But we are not going there, right? Okay. So interestingly, many Indian traditions also explain that eating with your hands, okay, it has, well, eating with your hands now, it gives you a better taste, a lot of people say, but actually it is kind of proven in some way, not exactly scientifically, but they say that there is a better sensory connection between the food, you know, and you know, the uska from your hands, okay. There is a lot more mindfulness in what you eat, okay. This is distancing yourself from the food, okay. This gives you that touch ka experience. In fact, Ayurveda also connects fingers with that sensory balance, right? So cultural perspectives hai ye. Is that clear? Today, many luxury restaurants globally, they promote, okay, this has to be eaten, hand eating experiences. Literally, you know, there will be those food festivals jahan pe there is hand eating experiences there. Okay? It is like authentic cultural dining. So ironic from, you know, where they started here to having these kind of experience that they want to give. Ki hand se eat karke dekho. Okay? You know, as a great experience. So sometimes jo hai, societies first mock a practice and later they market it as fashionable. Right? Very important observation here. Important point here. UNESCO today basically recognizes that many traditional food systems, GS में आप पढ़ोगे, is basically intangible, क्या है वो? Intangible cultural heritage. Is that what it is? ICH है. Intangible cultural heritage. Cultural practices that are worth preserving. Okay, although I hope that, you know, eating with your hands is not going to be something that is like, you know, something that needs preserving. Okay, but this is what is the point here that I'm trying to drive here. इसका meaning ये है कि ICH वगैरह, human diversity itself is so valuable. Okay, that's a anthropological lesson. Okay, what is the right way to eat a burger? Which side of the camp are you on? रोटी सब्जी को fork से कैसे खाए? You know what? I'll tell you one thing. Okay, I was in a boarding school, military boarding school during my time, and breakfast, lunch, dinner, no hands. Okay, so if we were served idli, dosa, chapati, right? We've used, you know, spoon, fork, and so on as well. Okay, so again, was started during the British, and you know, it is considered to be something wo karte the. So you know, there was a point of time in my life that I would be this guy. Okay, but what's the right way to eat it? Is this right or is this right? Which side of the camp you are in, right? With hands. First of all, the burger is not part of our plate, says Arvi, right? Today, though, it has been part of your plate, especially in urban India. Agar aap dekhoge, it is definitely part of your plate. Okay, fast food ka culture has become so, desi burgers are there. Okay, even like street food mein hai. It's not something that is like your McDonald's or KFCs and Burger Kings, right? So you have like street food, jahan pe you have, in fact, really good burgers that are available on the streets of India as well. Okay, so you know what is right. The right answer, many of you are basically saying that this is right. Okay, but the right answer is ethnocentric nahi banna hai. Okay, to each their own. Right? To each their own. So this way is also fine, this way is also fine. But of course, even in the West, this is how they eat it. But just that, it's not everywhere. Okay, and similarly, you can see this, right? It's very culture specific. Okay, to some this is normal, and to some this is normal. And to most of you who are not part of this culture or this culture, both of these things are going to be a lot harder. Okay, because yahan pe also you have very distinct rules, okay, particular sequences and so on, and yahan pe also it is not very easy. Okay, usko place karne ke liye there is a particular order, right? Especially the South Indians might know it, right? There is a particular order. Kahan se aapko start karna hai? There is a particular order. What should you start with? What should you end? What should come? What should be the sequence? Right? Matlab everything, you know, is there. In fact, this requires also a lot of skill. How do you eat rice and rasam in this? Payasam will be served in this, guys. Thankfully today, payasam ko they essentially give you, payasam is kheer. Usko they give you in a separate cup and all of this. But yahan pe khate the. Okay, so that is that. To each their own. Is that clear? So that is your ethnocentrism. I hope that you have really gotten a real idea. Okay, the most important thing in class is to get that clarity, conceptual clarity. Okay, kya likhna hai and all that we will see. You understand, no? So till now we have explained and talked about what is ethnocentrism. We have discussed ethnocentrism, which means judging other cultures using our own culture as the base, as the standard. Now, anthropology actually introduced another idea, a very different idea. It's almost the opposite of ethnocentrism. And this idea is called as cultural relativism. It's called as cultural relativism. And this idea, itna powerful hai, it is probably one of the biggest contributions made by anthropology, academically speaking. I'll repeat the statement once again so that it sort of registers. It is probably one of the most important contributions made by the academic subfield of anthropology, academic field of anthropology. Okay, to academically the biggest contribution that they've actually made. Now, why am I saying this? Trying to understand what is the meaning of cultural relativism. I already told you it is kind of like the opposite. Cultural relativism. Culture, shall we break this down? Culture का मतलब क्या है? Okay, I can break this down into culture. I can break this down into relative. Okay, I can break this down into ism. Right? So this and this. ठीक है, culture का मतलब क्या है? Right? To use your own words, ways of life or way of life. Relative का मतलब क्या है? ओके, रिलेटिव का मतलब क्या है? रिलेटिव का मतलब है इट डिपेंड्स, it depends, dependent on context. Let's put it like this, right? And what did we say about ism? Ism essentially means it is idea, okay, belief, view, and so on. So how do you put this together? It means understanding a culture relative to not your culture but relative to its own context. उस context में क्या है? ठीक है, don't judge by outside standards, judge them based on what it does for that particular culture. Is that clear? So that is cultural relativism. It is all relative. There is no one that is higher than the other. There is no one that is lower than another. You get the picture, right? So it means every culture must be understood within its own context, meaning its own background, its own environmental conditions, its own ways of life. Meaning, why do they eat the rat meat? You get the picture, right? You can't compare ki, why are you different from me? Why are you eating something that is not on my plate? Okay, it is, you're not looking at their culture, you're not analyzing the culture through your personal likes and dislikes, or your culture's likes and dislikes, or your culture, what your culture describes as or understands to be normal or abnormal, right? Anthropology mein, before saying ew, disgusting, or this is strange, any of these things, आपको क्या पूछना है? Anthropology asks, why does this exist? Can I explain how this exists and why this exists? To get that, if that is a question that is coming to you, this you have developed a anthropological mindset. What have you done? You basically developed an anthropological mindset, and that is important, right? पहले anthropological mindset क्या है? Understand first, judge later. In fact, ऐसा नहीं. Understand first, don't judge. Is that clear? ठीक है, understand first, don't judge. Suppose there is an Indian person. Suppose there is an Indian person, Bharatiya Nagarik. ठीक है, he sees somebody else eating insects. And they do, by the way, even outside, even within India, right? Some cultures, the reaction for that Indian, normal, urban, middle class Indian, right? They might actually be having this reaction, oh, disgusting. Okay, that might be the first reaction, right? When I said it, right, what was your reaction? You tell me, right? Ethnocentrism था कि have you reached this particular point जहाँ पे cultural relativism is kicking in? ठीक है, आप मुझे बताओ. ठीक है, so in some societies, insects जो होते हैं, insects तो आपको पता है ना, insects, arachnids, whatever you want to call it, ठीक है, different, whatever, indiscriminate, right? They are rich sources of protein. Insects जो है, they are rich sources of protein. They are easily available. ठीक है, availability is an important factor. ठीक है, and they are environmentally, maybe sustainable in that particular place. You get the picture, right? So anthropology में वो क्या पूछते हैं? What should be the right question to ask? Who decides what is normal food? उनके culture is going to decide what is normal to them based on their own context. It's not biology. You get the picture, right? It is their culture, it is their needs, it's their context. उसको हमें understand करना है. India में, many people basically eat with their hands is an example that we saw. Europe में, what did we see? That is not normal. Okay, fork and knife becomes more common. Okay, it is easy. How do I basically eat without, fork and knife is probably what they're going to be thinking. Okay, in fact, for us, it would be maybe fork and spoon. Okay, वहाँ पे more than the spoon, it is a fork. Okay, so for example, let's say that, you're actually having fork and knife, no? Okay, so we need at least a spoon, right? So for them, if you have rice, they might give you a fork with it. Okay, and in your mind, it might be like, hey, did you not realize कि मतलब यहाँ पे gap है, यहाँ पे gap है, ठीक है, मतलब scientifically it's not making sense to me. ठीक है, a spoon would be a little more efficient. ठीक है, it's like, you get the picture, right? That is different. East Asia में क्या है? East Asia में, what are you guys talking about? What is this fork? What is this spoon? What is this knife? What is hands? Chopstick use करो. What are these chopsticks? These are extremely thin sticks. ठीक है, उसको use करके आप rice खाइए. You understand? Okay, then now you might be like the Europeans were better. ठीक है, you know, I think I can do that, but ये 2 thin sticks के साथ, ठीक है, to be able to eat rice seems even more challenged, ठीक है, even more challenging, sorry, ठीक है, you understand ना, but different cultures to each their own, right? Imagine a European basically saying eating with hands is saying is so uncivilized, ठीक है, वो ethnocentric होगा, ठीक है, because you know they are basically treating their own habit as universal, as natural, and as the only common sense kind of a thing. Anthropology में you reject this. Not in the initial school of thought. Initial school of thought, classical evolutionism was, the whole idea was to decide कि कितना primitive है other cultures. ठीक है, यहाँ पे normal है, abnormal है, it really depends on your culture. There is no such thing as absolute truth. You know what is the easiest way to eat rice? ठीक है, how you've eaten since childhood. To an Asian person, East Asian person, it is chopsticks. Chopsticks seem a lot more natural. For South Indian, it is going to be hands. Indians in general, it is going to be hands. For somebody else who's raised in European standards, it is going to be, you know, your knife and fork and spoons and so on. You understood? So is there anything that is considered to be normal? Right? Is there anything that is considered to be abnormal? Right? Normality essentially depends on culture. There is no such thing as there is an absolute truth. Is that clear? ठीक है, that this is the easiest way to eat it and this is the right way to eat it. Again, we go back to ethnocentric thoughts, ethnocentric ways of looking at the world. So that is why we need cultural relativism. Cultural relativism, you can think of it as हम reform कर रहे हैं हमारे ancient, the earlier sort of beliefs and thoughts and ways of looking at the world. ठीक है, customs and ideas जो है, कैसे आपको देखना है, कैसे आपको analyze करना है, look at it objectively. Look at it objectively. Make it a fair analysis. Make it a fair analysis. If you want to study another person's culture, analyze a person's culture, see a culture, make some meaning out of it, you have to understand the context in which they use it, within the setting in which they use it. ठीक है? And analyze it culturally. Culturally का मतलब है through their own local meanings. What kind of meaning they attach to it. ठीक है? You know, and so on. And don't attach higher and lower. Don't attach forward, backward. Don't attach primitive, advanced. ठीक है? Cultural relativism का मतलब ये नहीं है कि everything is correct. I'll repeat this once again. Cultural relativism का meaning ये नहीं है कि you know everything is correct. Understood ना? That is not what it is trying to say. Cultural relativism का meaning ये नहीं है कि you know everything is correct. It means understand करो before reacting emotionally, before being, you know, thinking of higher and lower, and that's the only difference, right? Understand करो कि वो कर क्यों रहे हैं जो भी वो कर रहे हैं. Is that clear? If I can tell you some more examples, and in fact यहाँ पे it is going to be Franz Boas. Franz Boas is the next school of thought के एक scholar who had essentially come out with, you know, in which he's criticizing the earlier scholars. You might be the founding fathers, founding parents of, you know, anthropology. Great that you have started an academic field, told us how to basically analyze certain kind of things. But methodology में कुछ problem है, कोई problem है. ठीक है? He's the scholar who's most strongly associated with cultural relativism, to make cultural relativism as an integral part of anthropology, as an integral part of anthropological analysis, is Franz Boas. Very, very important scholar. आपको chapter 6 में, the second part में हम उनके बारे में और detail में पढ़ेंगे. By the way, remember him. ठीक है? He is known as the father of American anthropology. Although he was not American, he was not born in America. ठीक है? You know, he's the father of cultural relativism. Meaning, he's the one who made cultural relativism as an integral part of anthropology. Today, it is an integral part of any sciences, social sciences, humanities. You cannot be judgmental. But the contribution came from anthropology. The contribution came from Franz Boas. ठीक है? Understand the historical background here. Boas जो है, you know, during his time, many Europeans, you know, they actually believe that the white race is the one that is superior. How can it not be superior? Okay, aren't we the chosen people of Jesus? You know, isn't it? Aren't we all in some kind of a civilizing mission of civilizing the rest of the people who are not like us? Okay, isn't Western culture given to be superior? Right? Aren't other societies really backward? Aren't tribal societies around the world primitive? Right? This was the thought. This was the atmosphere. Okay? And this is the thinking that influenced everything. Your politics, the colonialism. Colonialism is like, yes, we rule you. Uske pehle, you know, they had slavery and now they have their cultural imperialism and all of this. Okay? And they did not feel anything wrong. Okay? We are doing this in order to sort of like civilize them. right? So in the mindset at that particular point, it was not wrong in their mind. But Boas jo hai, he's challenging that mindset, even within anthropology and even outside. This entire mindset ko wo kya kar rahe hain? He's basically questioning it. He's essentially trying to pick it apart. ठीक है? He's trying to pick it apart. Okay, that's the most important thing. He's challenging this entire mindset. ठीक है? He's saying no culture, no society, no civilization, right, is naturally superior to another. Every culture जो है, they develop according to their own context. That depends on क्या environment है, it depends on their geography, it depends on their environment, it depends on their historical experience, it depends on their economic conditions, it depends on their local needs and so on. You understand, right? It's a very important shift in anthropology. Earlier scholars, what did we see? Classical evolutionists. Classical evolutionists, what did they say? Right? E.B. Tylor, your Morgan, your Fraser, right? What did they do? They're basically ranking different kinds of societies. See, if we are civilized, are these guys barbarians? Are they savages? Kya hai? Are they primitive? Are they extremely primitive? This is basically what the previous scholars were doing. But Boas jo hai, he strongly went against, मतलब ही वो रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं इस टाइप का कोई रैंकिंग मेथोडोलॉजी को, ठीक है, स्ट्रांगली रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं. ही इज सेइंग कल्चर्स आर नॉट हायर एंड लोअर, कल्चर्स आर डिफरेंट. क्या कह रहे हैं वो? कल्चर्स आर नॉट हायर एंड लोअर, कल्चर्स आर डिफरेंट. ठीक है, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इनफैक्ट दिस इज द बिगेस्ट एंथ्रोपोलॉजिकल लेसन दैट ही हैज प्रोवाइडेड टू एवरीबॉडी. Another important contribution that he had done, again, so both he had contributed, we'll study that in chapter number 6. But what he's saying is that you cannot be an anthropologist by not being in the field. You cannot study people without being with the people. You can't study a community without living in that community. You can't sit in Europe and America and make theories about humans in different parts of the world. A lot of people did not like it. How dare you say that I cannot be in Europe and write about people in Asia? He's saying, nay, if you want to write about people in Asia, if you want to write about humanity in general, go to the field, learn the language, observe the daily life. ठीक है, उनके साथ खाओ, उनके साथ पियो, उनके साथ रहो, ठीक है, understand the meanings from inside. You don't know the people that you're writing about. You have not seen them. कैसे लिखोगे? He transformed anthropology. Cultural relativism transformed anthropology forever. Cultural relativism transformed academics, sciences overall. ठीक है, Boas basically studied the, have you seen these igloos? ठीक है, have you seen the Eskimos? ठीक है, specific name उनका है Inuits, Inuit community. There are subgroups within those as well. So he basically studied the Inuit community by being in that harsh cold. बहुत सारे time, he had lost. He's like, okay, now this is gone. At least if I come back alive, it's fine. ठीक है, but many Europeans at that particular time, they thought that the Inuit का fur जो है, the kind of clothing that they're wearing makes them look very primitive. You understand, na? So the Inuits or the Eskimos are just very primitive people who are wearing animal skin on them. Shouldn't you be wearing 3-piece suit? Shouldn't you be wearing shoes that are basically like ours, like well polished? You're not like us. Shouldn't you be wearing a hat that is something like this? They're like, nay, the hat should basically be covering my ears because I'm living in the polar region. So Boas, help us realize this. Clothes are basically an adaptation. It should be, your clothes cannot be good for them. Your clothes have to be scientifically adapted to the Arctic survival. Right? We can't be in 3-piece suit. Neither is your suit very good for India. Right? Indian summers के लिए it cannot be very, very, it cannot make sense. Okay? So what might look primitive is actually एक बहुत intelligent, clever, एक adaptation है for their world. Is that clear? So it's a very important point that culture जो है, it is an adaptation. It's not a fashion competition. ठीक है, who can wear my suit better than me? ऐसा नहीं है. ठीक है, you cannot. Right? If I'm in Antarctica, ठीक है, I'm not going to be wearing South Indian clothes. ठीक है, मतलब I will not last. है कि नहीं? ठीक है, so superiority, inferiority में मत जाओ. Superiority depends on the context. उस वहाँ के लिए, ठीक है, don't have any kind of ego. Wear what is going to allow you to survive there. ठीक है, and Boas also contributed to rejecting racism and other things. Higher and lower का any तरीके से he goes against it. Is that clear? Cultural relativism. Same thing that I had shown you, right? Okay, the Irulas eating rats. Okay, so we just talked about this in the past, in just a few minutes back, right? So this is the Irula tribe. They're found in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, some portions of Karnataka. Actually, all of these 3 places. This is your Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. What is it? Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. All of those things are essentially in that same pocket, but mostly Nilgiris, those kind of regions. Traditionally, many Irulas were actually hunters and gatherers. We talked about this, right? Hunting and gathering is what they used to do, but we removed their access to the forest. Forest was their home for hundreds of years, centuries, maybe 1,000, but now today they don't have access to it. They have to live outside of it. And now what do they do for sustenance? They have to be able to go and work in the fields of people who are in and around that forest area. वहां पे क्या होंगे? There'll be like some paddy or whatever it is. Wahan pe there is going to be grains that are going to be stored. Then wherever you have grains that are stored, you're going to have rats. What do? They'll have these burrows of these rats. Wahan pe literally they blow smoke through those, okay, and usko shut karte hain, and in one particular place se they blow itna smoke that the rats eventually realize ki humse aur nahi ho payega, we are just going to rush out. Once they rush out, they're going to be caught and they're going to be taken to their homes and used as food. Now, why do they basically have it? Now, of course, they're going to have it because there is itna poor hai wo, right? They cannot they can't afford any other kind of protein. Okay? Now, you might say the cheapest source of animal protein that is there is chicken, but that is 250 rupees per whatever kg, I guess, and that is not something that they are going to be able to afford, right? At the same time, they have the highest IMR, they have the highest MMR, right? They need animal protein. Okay? So you have to understand. Instead of saying ew and disgusting and primitive, right? All those reactions are going to be ethnocentric, right? You have to understand why do they eat. Now I've explained why they eat. Is that clear, right? Chicken, why don't we eat chicken? It's not possible. Why do they eat fish? Can't afford. Okay, you understand, no? So one animal becomes a pest for one group. It becomes food for another group, right? And they're able to survive. Just like a particular clothing for a particular place, yahan pe wo kya kar rahe hain? A particular food for a particular context. Is that clear? Now, even if you see, there are innumerable examples. Can you tell me what this is? In fact, let me tell you some more examples. Take a cultural relativism, some more examples we'll see. Let's take a look at some more examples. For example, sacred cows in India, right? So many of you know that India mein we consider cows to be very sacred. Both outsiders ke liye jo hai, they look at ki India mein, is it true that there is cows everywhere? Is it true that if you see a cow you do this? Yes, many people kind of do it. Why do you respect cows so much? Isn't that just an animal? Why are cows so respected and revered so much in India? Anthropology says kya? Understand the context first. Indian civilization mein, Indian past mein agar aap dekhoge, whoever had cows in and around, whoever had access to cows used to be a big asset. Unke ghar mein, it is going to be bahut prosperity. In different ways, they would basically say prosperity. Why so? Because cow ke ghar mein na, they don't know it is the cows that are giving it in they know that because agar aapke paas cow hai, then there is prosperity. But why do you have it? There is milk, there is protein, kids survive. Unke matlab kitchen ke liye there is dung ka fuel. There is agricultural support ke liye, cows and ox and so on. It is an economic security. So cows jo hai, food and fertilizer and fuel and so many different kind of things ke liye, cows eventually became linked with something that is sacred. Agar aapke ghar mein cow hai, aap survive karoge, aap thrive karoge. Then it became linked with religion, with purity, with emotional attachment. Because in our past there is something. So cultural relativism jo hai, it is saying ki don't judge. Understand what could be the context, what could be the history here. Okay, don't just immediately mock beliefs. Okay, a lot of people actually say, for example, Franz Boas ka example agar aap dekhoge, he actually wrote about the fact that they eat raw meat. Okay, a lot of people are like, what is raw meat? Inuits jo hai, wo Eskimos jo hai, they eat raw meat. Okay? Now you might think that raw meat, okay, so now imagine if somebody basically says this, they basically slaughter an animal and then they take that blood and then they eat it and aise lagega, okay, but you have to understand the context. Arctic regions mein, Eskimos mein, the Eskimo communities, Inuit communities mein, they traditionally eat raw fish. Okay, they eat raw seal meat. Okay, for outsiders they might think raw kha rahe hain, not even cooking, wo primitive reh sakta hai, ethnocentric. But anthropology and anthropologists discovered that in a place like this, cooking fuel nahi hai. Okay, and you don't have wood that is easily available. Kahan plants nahi hai, this is Arctic. Kahan se, like, how do I create fire? It is limited. So raw meat jo hai, that has to be consumed in the raw form. And it is not ki raw, it is like dripping in blood or something. And raw meat jo hai, apparently also preserves nutrients a lot better, jo if we cook it with fire, it is lost. For example, vitamin C. Apparently, vitamin C is one of those kind of vitamins that is preserved better if you're eating it raw. Don't try it. Okay? It is not for your belly. Okay? Unke liye theek hai. ठीक है, बट प्लीज डोंट, ये मतलब इसको एक क्लिप वगैरह देख के मतलब डोंट ईट इट, ठीक है, यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू बी एबल टू डू वेल. ओके, इनफैक्ट द शेरपास यूज्ड टू टेल अस, यू नो, इन दैट एवरेस्ट बेस कैंप में कि यू नो व्हाट, दिस वाटर इज वेरी वेरी प्योर. आपको हमेशा लगेगा कि यू वांट टू पुट योर, यू नो, पुट इट इनसाइड हियर एंड देन, यू नो, वॉश योर फेस एंड देन ड्रिंक इट. इट इज द प्योरेस्ट वाटर एंड ऑल ऑफ दिस. It is purest water for our bellies, not your bellies. So please spend some money and only drink hot water, boiled water, you know, which is extremely difficult wahan pe, theek hai, but you please only drink that because you can't afford to fall ill, right? So understand that. Anyway, so what looked strange is basically an adaptation to their world, their climate, their context, extreme climate ke liye. So culture often develops to as an adaptation, as for their survival. ठीक है, सी कल्चरल रिलेटिविज्म, जॉइंट फैमिली इज समथिंग दैट स्पेशली वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी में दे फाइंड इट कि हाउ डू सो मेनी पीपल बेसिकली लिव टुगेदर. ठीक है, वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी अगर आप देखोगे, दे एम्फसाइज व्हाट, इंडिविजुअल फ्रीडम, न्यूक्लियर फैमिलीज. ठीक है, यू नो, सम ऑफ यू माइट हैव हर्ड दिस और यू माइट हैव सीन दिस इन पॉप कल्चर, राइट? दे माइट बी कि जॉइंट फैमिली में क्यों रहते हो? इज इट बिकॉज यू डोंट हैव प्लेस? ठीक है, डू पीपल नॉट हैव प्लेस टू, यू नो, गो एंड स्टे समवेयर एल्स, कि मतलब दे कांट अफोर्ड इट, कि क्या है? हाउ कैन सो मेनी पीपल बेसिकली लिव इन द सेम रूफ? Then I'll be like, नहीं, joint family अगर होंगे तो they could be, the house might be bigger. अच्छा, if the house is bigger, why do you, मतलब what? So you have to understand the context here. Joint family is developed because agriculture is our way of life. Economic cooperation is required there. Elderly को care करने के लिए you have it, and you know, shared responsibilities को take care करने के लिए, and all of this we have this. Cultural relativism teaches you to say कि don't compare systems blindly. Each system basically has, you know, it exists for its own reasons. ठीक है, and it might be, you know, यहाँ पे भी problems होंगे, आप में भी problems होंगे, but this might be better for this particular context at this particular time period. This might be best for you and for this particular time period. Arranged marriage is another one, right? You know, a lot of people, especially outsiders, think how can you let your parents choose your marriage partners? ठीक है, many Indians should say कि we don't know how to choose. ठीक है, you know, or a better point is you don't know how to choose yourself. Look at your divorce rates, look at our divorce rates. ठीक है, ऑफ कोर्स इट्स अ वेरी सिंपली, मतलब बहुत ग्रोस ओवर सिंप्लीफिकेशन हम कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज डिवोर्स कैन हैपन और नॉट हैपन बिकॉज यू नो यू डोंट हैव एन आउट. ठीक है, बट हाउ कैन पेरेंट्स अलाउ choose marriage partners for you? ठीक है, this is kind of an ethnocentric way of looking at things, not being able to understand how marriages, in fact उनके world also had arranged marriages for the longest duration. It's only the last 50-100 years, World War II के बाद ही, you know, they're having a lot more of these kind of non-arranged marriages. Historically उनके marriages also used to be connected to kinship alliances, to property, to उनके social networks, to social stability. ये सब important था. ठीक है, of course many of them exist now as almost a क्या कहूँ, like a symbolic importance, ceremonial importance. For example, today let's say in Western society, you know, if somebody likes somebody, you know, and they decide to marry, पहले वो decide करते हैं, and there is a symbolic act of let me go and ask your father for your hand. ठीक है, and they basically sit down and they're like, okay, ठीक है, they both have a glass of whatever kind of, you know, drink is appropriate there. ठीक है, maybe smoke some cigars and then eventually be like, you know, I've been thinking for so long and I'm thinking of officially asking your daughter. मतलब this is basically what मतलब हमने decide कर लिया, मुझे भी पता है कि वो yes कहने वाली है. ठीक है, हम करने वाले हैं शादी के लिए, आपको invite करेंगे, आपके बेटी के marriage में आपको invite करेंगे. All these things we say, but you know, I just wanted to ask you, you know, for her hand, for permission and so on. Yeah, this is basically what, ठीक है, these are पहले था, अभी this is like, okay, so this is a nice thing to do. If you do it, it is great. You understand ना? So anthropology में ना, यहाँ से हम वहाँ पे we are not going to judge, वहाँ से यहाँ पे हमें judge नहीं करना है. ठीक है, anthropology does not say arranged marriage is perfect. It does not say, you know, the non-arranged or marriages where they find their own is going to be perfect. Neither of which. It tells you कि understand the social context on what exists and why it exists in which society. Is this clear? Any other example that you could think of? Eating with hands in India, yes. KL says the next one, right? The limitations, the Satya. Sir, if someone eats chicken just for taste or luxury, opposing that is considered ethnocentrism. Okay. Living with the parents, okay, okay. AD, you know, any question with regard to this, you ask me now. Anything else, you ask me at the end of the class or the beginning of the class. Okay. Marriages in the morning in the south and in the evening in North India. No. Even Andhra weddings, अगर आप देखोगे, it happens like, actually it's early morning, but वो होगा 2:30 को in the night or 3 in the morning, you know, and 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. Literally, I've been to, you know, many of these kind of weddings जहाँ पे it happens in such a manner कि मतलब dinner वगैरह वो serve करेंगे, everybody will be there, but by the time it is the actual time of the wedding, it's only the family members. यहाँ पे मतलब, you know, 5-10 लोग होंगे, वहाँ पे 5-10 लोग होंगे, but you know, till like at the muhurtam ke time, it will be only that many people there. Only the close relatives will be there. Every other chair is kind of empty. Okay, so it's not just north and south. Easily we cannot break this down. But yes, you know, in some places it's basically considered कि मतलब जब सूर्य, you know, ऊपर है, then it is considered to be auspicious. Some other kind of calculations, I guess, in other parts. Okay, and that is that. Both have their own context. Both have their own sort of ideas behind it. See, at the same time, you know, while cultural relativism is a very, very big contribution, understand this: cultural relativism is not absolute. Cultural relativism is not absolute. It is not unlimited cultural relativism. इसका मतलब ये है कि anthropology में we do not say accept every practice of every society blindly. मैं ये रिपीट करता हूं, एंथ्रोपोलॉजी में हम ये नहीं कहेंगे कि एक्सेप्ट एवरी प्रैक्टिस ब्लाइंडली, एवरी प्रैक्टिस ऑफ एवरी कल्चर ब्लाइंडली. नो, ऐसा नहीं. Anthropologists generally say कि tolerance should generally be the best approach or the basic approach. ठीक है, unless, and that is important here, unless basic human rights are violated. And when I say basic human rights, you know, I'm just saying, you know, Article 21 वगैरह, right, liberty and so on. There has to be some kind of a balance. See, for example, right, a classic example was sati. Now, sati is not a practice that was like pan-India. Sati was not a practice that is there in entire, you know, the entire hierarchy of Indian social order. Some upper classes में, ठीक है, some Brahmins, some Kshatriyas, especially Bengal वगैरह में, there was a practice जहाँ पे the widow was actually burned on the husband's funeral pyre. Okay, and you know, the British actually somehow come out and say, you know, we were the ones who sort of did away with it and so on. Actually, it was not. They were okay with it, okay, for a long duration, right? And you know, the reform actually came from within. They signed on it. Okay, so you have to understand, sometimes sati was socially pressured, sometimes it was forced, and so on. Okay, but you cannot defend the practice of sati saying ye hamara tradition hai. What is it? Parampara, pratishtha. You know, all these things we say now. How do you basically say this thing? Even if it is tradition, it is wrong. You cannot say कि ये हमारा संस्कृति, ये हमारा culture है. No, it is not. ठीक है? So there has got to be some sort of a, like, you know, a basic level of rights. उसको आपका tradition, आपका culture should not basically cross that. So anthropology में today, what do we say? Culture itself cannot justify violence. Just because it was part of your culture does not mean there is justification for the kind of violence or for the kind of wrongs that it is doing. It's a very important line here. If आपका एक cultural practice जो है, अगर वो cultural practice is violating the right to life of somebody, the dignity of somebody, the equality of somebody, the bodily autonomy, freedom of somebody, then criticism of that culture becomes necessary. Not their entire society. ठीक है, that particular cultural component का criticism becomes necessary. It's an important distinction. Understanding is not equal to approval. I might be able to say, okay, I can understand where this comes from, but that does not mean that is the approval of the person who understands it. You can understand why something emerged historically. Johar वगैरह आपने देखा होगा, there is this whole movie Padmavat and so on, right? So some of the worst things can actually happen to people who get caught, you know, after a war. Okay, you understand why it emerged historically. Okay, and you can still oppose it ethically. Okay, that is mature anthropology. Another example, let's say there is a society, बहुत सारे examples आप सोच पाओगे, ठीक है, you can give me these examples. In fact, one of you already mentioned this, and I saw this a little earlier, ठीक है. Suppose a society practices bonded labor. What are they practicing? Bonded labor. What is bonded labor? Bonded labor essentially means that हमारे लोगों को, you know, कोई और हमेशा आके serve करते थे. That is wrong. It could be culture, it could be tradition, it is wrong. Slavery. A society practiced slavery. That is wrong. It can be tradition, it can be, you know, history, it can be whatever it is. It is wrong. Honor killing that takes place in India. Today, I believe it is called as dishonor killing. Right? Dishonor killing, you know, if people basically marry without being in the same caste group, yeah, same, whatever, you know, parental approval ke bina, there could be dishonor killing. Can we simply say that it is their culture? ठीक है, वी शुड नो हु आर वी टू जज देयर कल्चर, ऐसे ही मारेंगे, कह सकते हैं ऐसे? Absolutely not. So anthropology basically today combines cultural sensitivity with universal human rights. ठीक है, not everything can be, if some things basically require criticism. You can understand where it comes from, why it historically emerged, why it was practiced. At the same time, you can oppose it. That is a modern approach. ठीक है, so for example, can a teacher understand why cheating happens and still, punish cheating? Of course. ठीक है, I understand why teaching happens, but that does not mean I approve of it. That does not mean that I'm going to say कि ठीक है, मतलब it happens, it is part of it. Same logic here. Anthropology studies deeply. If not, it is not anthropology. ठीक है, then it has the ability, or it basically makes you evaluate ethically. Not from an emotional standpoint, not from a blind standpoint. ठीक है, today you have many scholars, in fact some scholars I would say, now some scholars have basically argued that cultural relativism itself जो है, it can become dangerous if it goes to a very high degree. In fact, the biggest contribution there, well, literally like a full stop रखा था Elizabeth Zechander ने. ठीक है? What is that? So Elizabeth Zechander essentially makes an important criticism here. She's saying that look at this example from the 1990s. She's arguing that sometimes we say cultural relativism is something that is like important in all of this, right? Sometimes cultural relativism जो है वो misuse करते हैं. In fact, even the cultural members, okay, well, societal members who practice that particular culture also use cultural relativism. Don't judge me for what we do. This is who we are. That is a misuse by the same members of society. And generally, ये अगर आप देखोगे, it tends to come from the people who are more powerful in that particular society. It is the members who are more powerful. It is the members who are more dominant in that particular culture. And they are the ones who will say, this is our culture. We practice slavery. We practice untouchability. We control our women. You understand? You cannot try to use culture as your mask. You can't hide behind culture and say, we control our women, don't judge us. We suppress our minorities, don't judge us. We maintain our authority, don't judge us. We justify our violence because of XYZ countries and don't judge us. This is a very important criticism today. Understand this carefully. In every society, हर एक समाज में there is power. And power जो है unequal है. There are people who are powerful, there are people who are less powerful. Some groups are going to dominate. They're going to dominate all spheres. Politics में वो dominate करेंगे, religion में वो dominate करेंगे, economy में dominate करेंगे. We are the owners, you are the laborers. We are the masters, you are the slaves. Understand कर रहे हो ना? They basically even, dominate the social norms of that particular place. Women basically have this kind of a role. ये ही उनको करना है, ये हमारा culture है. आप हमें मतलब judge मत करो. No. You understand, right? It is a dominant, the more powerful groups who basically hide behind this cultural relativism and do things that are not right. Right? These groups, sometimes they present themselves and their interest as the culture itself. It is not. It is your interest and not in the interest of the person that you are sort of suppressing. You are showing your violence against. So anthropologist में अभी you have to be a little more analytical. जहाँ पे आप पूछ रहे हो कि culture है, but who's benefiting and who's suffering? Whose culture are you defending? Are you defending the culture of everybody? Your slave will also basically say कि ये हमारा culture है, let me be that slave. Understand, as an anthropologist, you've got to socio-cultural anthropology, but you've got to have this analytical thinking. Suppose girls are denied education, that's what Elizabeth Zechander says, and then it is the members who come and say, it is the male members who come and say, this is our tradition. वो कौन करेंगे? The girls थोड़ी कहेंगे कि this is our tradition. Okay, don't force us to go to school. कहेंगे क्या? नहीं. Who's basically forcing them? Anthropologists must ask, is it the powerful and the more dominant members of that particular society trying to say that? Do the girls themselves agree with this, that this is their culture? Or are they being forced to accept the dominant and the powerful groups? So again, ये एक important distinction है. Anthropology जो है, again, be very analytical. You cannot have blind acceptance to every cultural trait, every cultural element. Anthropology is critical understanding. So Zechander basically gives us a shocking example of what happened in Algeria, and innumerable such examples are going to be there in every place जहाँ पे you're hiding behind cultural relativism. Okay, so some levels where you have to draw that line. So she actually discusses that, there was an incident in Algeria in 1996, in jahan pe there were two, a couple of adolescent girls, and they were actually raped and murdered. And the question is why? Because they attended school. So meaning they were actually raped and murdered. It was not some random event. It is because to teach them a lesson, because they attended school. And in fact, the fundamentalist group had basically ordered saying that girls should not attend school. The girls disobeyed. Teach them a lesson, teach everybody else and their fathers and their mothers who decide to go against the fundamentalist group का वो orders जो भी उन्होंने दिया था, वो फतवा जो उन्होंने दिया था, ठीक है, उनको इतना violently punish करो कि सभी में वो खौफ पैदा हो जाए. You understand ना, वो डर आ जाए. You understand, right? And now you cannot say कि ये हमारा cultural tradition है. Some people might say it, वो fundamentalist group के होंगे, वो some men होंगे, ठीक है, some extremists होंगे, some terrorists होंगे. You understand ना? Somebody else का wish नहीं है. Those two girls actually wanted to go and attend school. They did not care about the fatwa. They are like, nay, I am still going to go because I too want to go and learn things. Okay? But because they disobeyed, they were violently punished. And, and the fundamentalists used to say, ki, see, but cultural relativism, please don't come here and write about us like this. Okay? All we are doing is guarding our cultural traditions. So you also respect our cultural traditions, jahan pe hum kahenge aur baki sunenge. Is that right? Anthropology says no. Human rights must come first. Very important. Okay? Education is a basic human right. This is the 21st century. Education is a basic human right. Safety is a basic human right. Life is a human right. Culture, your culture cannot justify such brutality. It cannot justify rape. It cannot justify murder just because somebody did not listen to you. Okay? So generally you have to understand, that you cannot excuse oppression. Cultural relativism jo hai, it should help you understand. It definitely has a very important place because it tells you you should have empathy for the people that you're trying to study. You have tolerance for the people that you're trying to analyze and learn more about. You have understanding, you have acceptance, you have sensitivity, but it cannot be used to support violence. It cannot be used to, it never ever supported violence. Okay? If a culture is used to say, ki yes, we silence the powerless people in our particular culture, and please, you anthropologists, stay and remain silent. Okay? The answer is going to be a no. Anthropology must balance proper cultural understanding because that is anthropology. Cultural understanding of different groups is very, very important, but you have to balance it with an ethical responsibility, and there is that balance. There has to be basic human rights cannot be. And आपको understand करना है ये balance में जो है, the people who basically say कि हमारा culture हमारा ये, they tend to be the more dominant, they tend to be the more powerful, and they are oppressing over somebody else, and they say कि this is our culture. The ones who are getting the oppressed are not going to accept this. Okay? They're not going to accept that this is our culture. So overall, if I tell you, इसको थोड़ा सा एक summary करते हैं. If I can summarize this. Shall we summarize? What have we seen now? By the way, this is इतना important question कि almost हर एक साल इसमें questions आते हैं. ठीक है? And it is also very important because it is through this that you have to take a look at the rest of the topics from cultural relativist standpoint. Okay? But of course, you should know where to draw the line and who is basically hiding behind this cultural relativism. Okay? By doing awful things. So pehle, what did we see? We started with ethnocentrism, and what did we say? Ethnocentrism is you're judging other cultures using your own culture as the standard. My culture is normal, thinking like that. Other cultures are strange. You understand, na? We saw some examples: rat eating, frog legs, dog meat ke debates, dining etiquette in the West and in India, or the Chinese send their chopsticks and so on. And then we understood food habits jo hai, it is very culture specific. कोई universal नहीं है. There is nothing that is higher, there is nothing that is lower, no superior, no inferior. Next, we saw cultural relativism. Very simple idea here. Understand before judging. Or understand and don't judge. Okay? But you might have to judge, There might be some limits. We'll come to that a little later. We studied Franz Boas, a great contributor to anthropology even today. Probably one of the top 3, top 5 contributors to anthropology overall. Okay, so he said every culture jo hai, it develops differently based on its own history, based on its own environment, based on unke local conditions jo bhi hain. And then we saw those examples for it. For example, we saw the Irula tribe, rat eating is connected to their survival. Unka only protein availability jo hai, it's an adaptation to the new world that they've become part of. Jab wo unka forest वगैरह का वो, access has basically been closed down. So anthropology mein generally cultural relativism, especially if you look at something like, rat eating or anything that you find strange, the right question should be, why does this practice exist? And not ki, this is so weird, or why is this weird? You understand, no? You should also have an important caution that cultural relativism, so important, such a big contribution to anthropology, but it is not blind acceptance at all costs, at all levels, right? If there is violence, if there is oppression, if there is denial of rights, wo sab agar hote hain, then criticisms criticism becomes necessary, अनिवार्य बनता है. ठीक है, we saw Sati, we saw that Algeria का case, we basically saw Elizabeth Zetchenter's that criticism. ठीक है, you know, and lastly we understood कि anthropology में balance that anthropology teaches is very important. It cannot be blind judgment, it cannot be blind acceptance, but understanding along with an ethical thinking, right? So different hai does not mean inferior hai. That's the most important thing. And understanding culture does not mean supporting injustice. So this has to be very clear. Done? That's why I'm telling you, you know, anthropology is basically a master's level subject. Optional, जो भी आपके options होते हैं, it's a master's level subject which basically requires a particular way of thinking, a particular way of reading. ठीक है, in 20 days, 20 sessions, you know, you will probably have socio-cultural anthropology. All 6 institutions, once you've studied it, you will have a particular way of viewing things. Okay, a lens of looking at the world. Okay, an historian will look at it a different way, philosopher will look at it a different way. Same thing will be seen by different scholars in different through different lenses. You have to develop that lens. Okay, so that is the whole point here. So these theoretical concepts become very important. It's not just कि मतलब क्या लिखना है. Of course, you know, the whole point here is that you write so much. Okay, but my perspective is, you know, you have to develop that lens. Okay, some nitty-gritties आपको आ जाएगा. ठीक है, I forgot Ralph Linton today, Herskowitz today, Malinowski, वो सब आ जाएगा. ठीक है, as you use them more and more, right? But that ability to take a look at the world, you know, through this particular lens has to be there. Question number 1: what is ethnocentrism? Option A. Do you want it easy, medium, or hard? Tell me. Okay, I think I'll do one thing. I'll keep some easy, some medium, some hard. ठीक है, and that is what is ethnocentrism? A. Understanding cultures objectively. B. Judging other cultures using one's own culture. Judging other cultures using one's own culture. C. Mixing of cultures. D. Study of human evolution. Okay. Easier start. This you should get right. Which scholar is strongly associated with cultural relativism? Okay. Question number 2. Which scholar is strongly associated with cultural relativism? A. Morgan, B. Durkheim, C. Franz Boas, D. Bronislaw Malinowski. Question number 3. Classical evolutionists, right? We know that they had that ethnocentric views. But if my question is, which is the one that we saw? According to classical evolutionists, culture basically evolves from dash to dash to dash. We saw that, right? A. Monotheism to polytheism to animism. B. Animism to polytheism to monotheism. C. Science to religion to magic. And D. Tribe to band to state. And by the way, all of these things हम ये next sessions में हम देखेंगे. Question number 4 है ना? Cultural relativism says we should first A. Judge cultures. B. Rank cultures. C. Understand cultures in their own context. D. Reject traditions. RV says, what are you saying? I had studied public administration for 2 years but didn't enjoy anthropology. Is fun, right? Everybody has a particular liking and not liking, but anthropology is hard to not like, you know, because it's so new. It's so you learn so many things. Okay, which is like मतलब, you know, if it's like a party room ना, like एक party में है and you're meeting people ना, मतलब you have so many मतलब stories after stories. ठीक है, literally people will be like around you listening to all of these kind of things. Okay, मतलब you can entertain people. That's not why you're doing the subject. Okay, you're basically doing it because anthropology trained administrator बनना है and बनेंगे for sure. ठीक है, but it also gives you something to talk about in many settings. So if you're an introvert, okay, मतलब you're getting some help. Okay, the right answers are. Act a minute. Question number 1, what is ethnocentrism? I told you it's a blank, right? Judging other cultures using one's own culture, right? You're judging other cultures based on your own culture. Okay, answer is B. Second question is, which scholar is associated with cultural relativism? Spelling के साथ Franz Boas. Okay, answer is C, Franz Boas. F-R-N-Z or Z, Boas. F-R-A-N-Z, Boas. B-O-A-S. ठीक है, according to classical evolutionists, culture evolves in which direction? ठीक है, it is animism to polytheism to your monotheism. Answer is B. Answer is B. Okay. Cultural relativism says we should first understand cultures in their own context. Option C. And the last one was there should be Elizabeth Zechenter is basically criticizing absolute cultural relativism, because it can sometimes do what? It can actually, justify the oppression by the dominant groups there, the powerful groups there, the fundamentalist group there, right? And oppress the ones who are minorities or the poorest or the marginalized groups. Okay, so it cannot be absolute, cultural relativism. Now tell me how many answers right? Sir, what is pass mark? I would say 2 and above. 2 and above, right? Sometimes, maybe scholars' names you have not gotten it right or something. 3 is very good. 4 means matlab, everything you have absorbed. And 5 essentially means that AG says 5 out of 5, SS says 5 out of 5, GN, are you new? Great, 5. Prakash says 4 out of 5, good. Lakshita says all correct, 5 out of 5. JS says 4 out of 5. KL 5 out of 5. MG 5 out of 5. HPP 5. All right says Ankit and SR and PS. HK says 3 out of 5. HK, which 2 went wrong? Is it the scholars? Kiran got all correct. VK, Kishan, ST, there are 2 STs today. Both of them got 5 out of 5. AV, DR, PK, 5, 5, 4, 5. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, so you've understood it. KSS, LD, Sarika, KD, BGR, Ved, SKS, CK, RV. Good. Tejasvi. Good. Great. Krisha. Explain the fifth one. Fifth one, the answer is you cannot have absolute cultural relativism, because, absolute cultural relativism is something that is going to be used by the people there to justify any kind of wrongs and oppression, and, generally what dominant and powerful groups वो use करेंगे, उसके पीछे hide करेंगे. How can we justify this? If a community considers cow as sacred and the community considers it as food, opposing that or making laws against it, is it ethnocentrism because human rights are not involved? Okay. So you're looking at what is happening around us, right? Okay, that is that. And there's another question, sir, but animal cruelty on the name of ethnocentrism is not fair. Am I being ethnocentric as a vegan? Interesting questions. Again, so if you have to go back and think according to those. Now, both are actually good anthropological doubts. See, there is one which is, from the polity perspective, and the other is more from anthropology perspective. If you're an anthropologist who's going to try to study and understand a particular culture, first you have to understand the situation. A community that considers cow as sacred, another community that considers cow as food. Okay? Both are based on their cultural beliefs, their historical traditions, their maybe religious values, their ecology, their economy. Actually, na isko thoda sa hum elaborate karenge another day when we do cultural materialism. Okay, so for example, how did cow come to become sacred in a particular culture, right? And how did the pig become, the opposite of sacred? Okay, evil almost, right? Haram, as we call it, in another particular culture. Okay, so once you study it, so you will understand. Cultural materials explanation, chapter number 6 mein aayega ye. So is the short answer here is opposing the other automatically going to become, ethnocentrism? Depends on how. It depends on why that opposition happens. If someone is saying our practice is civilized and theirs is backward, theirs is inferior, then it is by definition ethnocentrism. Okay? As an anthropologist, you can't learn a particular culture, study a culture by having this ethnocentric view. One culture is judging another without using its own culture, you're judging another culture using its own standards. Unka own standards ke saath, agar aap, I'll rephrase this. If you're judging one culture, right? Let's say there are 2 societies here. If one culture is judging another one's culture by using unka standards, not the cultural standards of the people who are practicing it, okay, that is going to be, definitionally speaking, it is going to be ethnocentrism. Okay, but what if you're saying laws, ठीक है, laws. See again, anthropology में यहाँ पे it becomes a little more nuanced. ठीक है, there are more perspectives that you'll have to keep. Laws are not always based on human rights. ठीक है, they can also reflect the majority का values. It could be the religious sentiments, peace. ठीक है, historical traditions. मतलब economic concerns and so on. ठीक है, so anthropology does not simply say everything is acceptable. ठीक है, that's the moral story of what we have studied. ठीक है, cultural relativism says what? It's saying that understand the practices in their own cultural context. It does not necessarily mean that every practice must be legally accepted everywhere. Right? Okay, so that's a distinction. Why does this community believe this? ठीक है, the state will ask, an anthropologist ऐसे पूछेंगे, but state क्या पूछेंगे? State is going to be looking at what should be the public lobby. Very different questions, very different sort of perspectives and so on. So cow, एक दिन हम anthropologically will try to understand why it is linked to purity and religion and to agrarian economy and survival and so on. Why is it a mother का symbolism? ठीक है, and for somebody else, it is just a food का source, it's just a protein का source, it's just an economic resource. ठीक है, different cultural logics. Is that clear? Ethnocentrism जो है, it is like one side assuming कि our way is right, our ideas are right, our ideas are moral, our ideas are human, our ideas are civilized, and everybody else is the opposite of that. Okay? You don't have the ability to understand the cultural context of another culture. Why is it important to them? And so on. There's another question. Animal cruelty but animal cruelty on the name of ethnocentrism is not fair. Am I being ethnocentric as a vegan? Interesting question. See, moral values. Now, what is moral values? Every culture basically has their own sense of moral values. Okay? You can personally believe that animal suffering is wrong. Veganism is ethically better. Okay? But this is moral. It is an ethical position. Anthropology में क्या पूछेंगे? ठीक है? Anthropology does not ask you to become, everything को accept करो blindly and so on. That's not basically what it is saying. When does it become ethnocentrism? It becomes ethnocentric जब हम कहेंगे कि these people are barbaric, these people are inferior because they eat the meat of the animals that they kill. ठीक है? My culture alone is civilized because I am vegan. Here the issue is not the ethical concern itself, but the fact that आप judge कर रहे हो entire cultures as inferior. If you are judging an entire culture as inferior, then वो बनेगा ethnocentric. Is that clear? So anthropology में ना, it basically tries to separate two things. एक है आपका understanding. Understanding का मतलब है कि why do certain communities eat animals. ठीक है, उसको understand करने के लिए you have to look at it holistically. Ecology, climate, history, survival, economy, religion, मतलब बहुत सारे factors आएंगे. Arctic Inuit population हमने we already talked about this ना. They were historically dependent heavily on animal food because यहाँ पे agriculture जो है it is not possible. But to go and say कि वहाँ पे हम रहेंगे and हम वहाँ पे vegan बनेंगे, it essentially means जब तक आप बनोगे, ठीक है, जब बनेंगे then देखेंगे. You understand, but it's not practically possible unless it is modern transport and communication that can transport all the vegan calories that is available. ठीक है, so moral evaluation करना गलत है. ठीक है, because you can disagree ethically, yes you can, but you have to understand why some culture has a different diet compared to yours. You should be able to understand this. ये important distinction है. ठीक है, and that is that. Okay. We will study this in cultural materialism. ठीक है, so that will be good. Blindly accept भी नहीं करना है, blindly ये भी आपको accept नहीं करना है. ठीक है, everything has to be understood. ठीक है, the most important thing, step number 1 amongst the 5-step process that I've given you, the first one is class attendance and live attendance and conceptual clarity. Once you have this conceptual clarity, you see the kind of quality that comes in your answers that I'm going to give you feedback on. Okay, it is not going to be easy questions alone that you can handle. You can handle questions that are higher order, more analytical. Okay, because वो conceptual clarity आपका है. But please, you have to write and you have to take my feedback and try to ensure that all your competitors से ज़्यादा आपको लिखना है. ठीक है, I've shown you yesterday, right? The stack of answers that comes from your foundation should be इतना. ठीक है, you will beat every single other person. ठीक है, who's going to be a competitor? You can then say, ठीक है, मतलब ये कर लो, then you can compete with me. ठीक है, you deserve it. right? So you try to build that stack of answers and take as much feedback as possible. Perfectionism should not be the goal. Perfectionism नहीं आएगा, ठीक है? Perfectionism जब आएगा ना तो मतलब you cannot write the first answer as quality answer. Below average से start करना पड़ेगा या bad answer से start करना पड़ेगा. Write 10 answers like this, 20 answers like this, then it becomes below average. Below average 20 questions लिखो. उसके बाद next thing again while implementing the feedback of what I have given, ठीक है? When you try it, you know the next 20 questions will be average. ठीक है? Then again you implement the feedback. ठीक है? So learn, ठीक है? And develop your style, right? Find your rhythm, right? What works for you, right? In order to be able to make the point that you're trying to make. ठीक है, बट सम ग्राउंड रूल्स मैं जो कहूंगा आपको वो फॉलो करना है, राइट? हाउ लॉन्ग शुड योर इंट्रोडक्शन बी, हाउ लॉन्ग शुड योर कंक्लूजन बी, ठीक है? कितने डायमेंशंस होने चाहिए, हाउ डू यू कैसे डायमेंशंस खोलना है, कैसे मल्टीपल डायमेंशंस रखना है, यू नो कहाँ पे स्पेसिफिक्स चाहिए, आर्ग्यूमेंट्स कहाँ पे चाहिए, दीज काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स यू हैव टू बेसिकली फॉलो. बाकी सब यू नो डेवलप द एबिलिटी, ठीक है? सो फॉर एग्जांपल एसएस इज देयर, एसएस का आंसर्स यू नो शुड बी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम लेट्स से मी, आई एम एनपी के आंसर्स. यू गेट द पिक्चर, राइट? सो एसएस का एक फ्लेयर होना चाहिए. यू डेवलप इट एंड यू डोंट हैव टू try to develop it as you write further and further, right? Based on your own ways of thinking, okay? And our content, ठीक है? Don't use anything else. And our examples and what I basically dictate here in class. इनको use करके ना, how it comes out for SS is going to be different from how it comes out for me. How it comes out for an AG is going to be different from how it comes out for me. You understand ना? The reason is the way I speak is different from the way you speak, because हमारा experience, हमारा you know background, and you know we've been doing this for very long, ठीक है? But you can explain something, I can explain something. ठीक है? Verbally I can explain, written I can explain something, you can explain something, and it'll have a different flair. ठीक है? So that is that. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Again, a few theoretical concepts before we can move into the institutions, actual institutions. Marriage क्या है, family क्या है, marriage किस type के होते हैं, क्या rules होते हैं, कहाँ पे कौन सा type prevalent है, those things we'll go to once we're done with the theoretical components. But theory is important. ठीक है? Theory is kind of important. Social institution, marriage, family, kinship, economic institutions, political institutions, religious institutions, only 6 आपके syllabus में है. But ये social institutions होते क्या है? Right? Let's take a look at a very famous definition by Douglas North. And I don't want you to memorize this. ठीक है? I want you to understand this. ठीक है? Let's try to break this down. What do you see here? Institutions क्या है? Institutions are humanly devised structures. Institutions are humanly devised structures, right? Of rules and norms that shape and constrain individual behavior. Look at this. Okay, institutions are humanly devised structures of rules and norms that shape and constrain human behavior. Let's try to break this down. Okay, and इसका actual meaning हम understand करते हैं. A few key parts है यहाँ पे. पहला वाला I see here is humanly devised structures. Humanly devised है. So meaning institutions जो है they are made by humans. It is made by humans for the humans. You understand? It is not by nature. It is not made by nature. It is not something that is like biological. वो genetic ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. They are not automatically born with the humans. Society में humans है. Humans have created these structures. Is this clear? There is no biological law saying you must marry only one person. नहीं है. But हर एक society में, हर एक समाज में, we allow one spouse in a particular society, ठीक है? Multiple wives in some society, multiple husbands in some society, but these marriage rules जो है, okay, ये marriage institution जो है, it is nothing but humanly devised rules, and they are socially created, meaning they are created by the humans in that society, and that is why anthropology में हम कहते हैं कि institutions are human inventions. So who creates these institutions? It is humans ourselves creating them. Is this clear? The next part is going to be structures of rules and norms. यहाँ पे 2 and 3 मान लो, ठीक है? Let's break this down. Structures of rules and norms. Can you see this here? So humanly devised structures of rules and norms. What kind of structures? These are basically rules and norms. So institution is nothing but rules and norms. कौन create करते हैं? Humanly devised. Humans of that particular society create certain kind of rules and norms. Society creates rules. Society creates expectation. आपको ऐसे behave करना है. Marriage अगर है एक institution, what are the rules for that particular marriage? What are the expectations within that marriage? What is acceptable behavior in that particular marriage? What is unacceptable behavior in that marriage? Is that clear? A simple example. Suppose you enter a classroom. You automatically know कि यहाँ का humanly devised उस society, उस school का rules आपको पता है. It's created by whom? गिवन बाय गॉड है क्या? नहीं, बाय द प्रिंसिपल, द टीचर्स, बाय मतलब हिस्ट्री में ये ऐसा आया है. डू नॉट शाउट इन दैट क्लास. ओके, इफ यू वांट टू स्पीक, रेज योर हैंड, वेट फॉर योर अपॉर्चुनिटी. ठीक है, व्हेन अदर स्टूडेंट इज बेसिकली स्पीकिंग, डोंट बी लाइक इसको कट करके हम बात करेंगे. ठीक है, रिस्पेक्ट द टीचर, रिस्पेक्ट द क्लासमेट, सिट प्रॉपर्ली. ठीक है, you understand ना, you cannot put up your feet on the desk. Who taught you all of this? These are humanly devised structures of rules and norms of that school, of that class, society ने. Is this clear? So please understand all of these things. I don't want you to think ये एक definition है, हम पढ़ लेंगे, रट लेंगे. ठीक है, भारी पड़ेगा. Okay, when anthropology is understood, it is reflected in the quality of your answers that shape and constrain individual human behavior. Rules and norms. What are norms? ठीक है, norms essentially mean, I told you, right, it is expected behavior and you know what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Is that clear? So for example, norms क्या है, हमारे भारतीय norms क्या है? ठीक है, touching elders feet in some families, North Indians, ठीक है, ऐसे जाना है, knees तक पहुंचना है, that is considered to be respectful. ठीक है, but you do it more often. ठीक है, South Indians don't do it as often unless there is a function, there is a festival, there is a something. ठीक है, एक particular day है, but literally you cannot just go like this. This is not respectful. What is respectful? पूरा नीचे जाना है. ठीक है, your thighs, your feet, your belly, your chest, your head, everything should be on the floor, and then you should basically reach out and touch the feet. ठीक है, mom, dad. ठीक है, and then please bless me before I walk into this UPSC prelims का exam 2027. You understand? ठीक है, स्टैंडिंग साइलेंटली ड्यूरिंग द नेशनल एंथम एंड नॉट क्रिएटिंग अ रकस, ये क्या है? नॉर्म्स. ओके, वेयरिंग, इंडिया एंड वेस्ट में अगर आप देखोगे, देयर आर नॉर्म्स. फॉर एग्जांपल, यू नो, वन ऑफ माय, मेरा एक बॉस था एंड ही इज अमेरिकन, एंड देन यू नो दे हैड, हिज मदर हैड पास्ड अवे एंड देयर वाज अ फ्यूनरल, राइट? एंड यू नो, इंडिया में फ्यूनरल अगर है तो जनरली यू नो व्हाट इज द कलर. ठीक है, यहाँ का नॉर्म है इज दैट यू वेयर व्हाइट, or you wear anything, that is fine. ठीक है, you know, you wear white is generally the norm, you know, wearing white to the funeral in our cultures. ठीक है, वहां पे it is like everybody wears a black suit, black and formals. You don't just rush and come. ठीक है, you wear a formal black attire, black tie, you know, all those kind of things and then come. ठीक है, I'm talking about funeral as in it's not immediate death के बाद. ठीक है, वो church में they will have like some kind of a prayer and all those kind of things. You're expected to wear black, you know, for the occasion. वो क्या है? उस society का norm है. White यहाँ पे इस society का norm है. You understand? These are norms. So anthropologists basically say, even saying thank you जो है, it is actually cultural. Some societies say it frequently. ठीक है, some societies almost never say it. ठीक है, inside the family, when was the last time you said the word धन्यवाद or thank you, धन्यवादलू, right? You know, when was the last time you said it? Okay, it is. So you get the picture. And norms are basically, even that politeness जो है, it is culturally sort of defined. कहाँ पे it is okay. People you don't know, you're expected to say. People you know, okay, अगर कहोगे कि मेरे से please, thank you and ये सब कह रहे हो, ठीक है, पराया लग रहा है क्या? Like, you know, what happened? ठीक है, I thought we were close. है कि नहीं? When was the last time you basically sent a message of thank you dear friend? लिखा है, मतलब have you ever sent it or have you ever said it? ठीक है, it's just like so. Norms depend on that particular society. These norms shape behavior, shape and constrain individual behavior. उसका मतलब क्या है? ठीक है, shaping behavior essentially means कि institutions slowly mold your ways of life. It slowly molds your personality. Very simple example. ठीक है, family आपको क्या teach कर रहा है? What is a family? How is it shaping, you know, and constraining individual behavior? ठीक है, family teaches you कि कैसे बात करना है. Language of course you know, but किस tone में कैसे बात करना है ताकि it comes off as like good manners. ठीक है, रिस्पेक्टेबल, सिविलाइज्ड. ठीक है, यू नो, एंड कैसे आपका इमोशंस को एक्सप्रेस करना है. ठीक है, इट शेप एंड कंस्ट्रेन इंडिविजुअल बिहेवियर. इफ यू टेक द एग्जांपल ऑफ, फॉर एग्जांपल, स्कूल. ठीक है, योर टीचर, ठीक है, द स्कूल टीचर्स यू बेसिकली व्हाट? दे टीच यू डिसिप्लिन, they teach you punctuality. ठीक है, they teach you मतलब still be competitive. ठीक है, and so on and so forth. Religion क्या करते हैं? Religion is also an institution. Religion teaches you morality. Religion teaches you and shapes and constrains individual behavior कि क्या करना है, क्या नहीं करना है. Okay, what is pure, what is you know, what should be the rituals, and you know, ethical action क्या है, and so on. So institutions क्या कर रहे हैं? Institutions are eventually shaping who you become. Exactly, institutions are there in order to shape what you become in that society. A child that is born, for example, a child that is born in India, a child that is born in Japan, a child that is born in Saudi Arabia, a child that is born in Brazil will all behave differently because institutions जो है, it is humanly devised structures of that particular society, ठीक है, of their rules and norms that shape and constrain individual behavior. So how you can be as a Brazilian and considered to be acceptable and okay, ठीक है, may not be something that is okay in Japan. ठीक है, how you might be in Indian metro might not be okay if you be the same way in, let's say, a Japanese metro. Have you seen Japanese metro? Nobody speaks. ठीक है, they're all very quiet because it's like very important that you show respect to the person there. He should not be bothered or she should not be bothered because I am speaking. ठीक है, उनको silence दे दो. You understand, no? Right? So look at it. Constrain individual behavior. The constrain is a word as well. What is constraining? Constraining का मतलब है कि limit the freedom. Why would you want to limit the freedom? Because unlimited freedom पॉलिटी अगर आपने पढ़ा होगा, ठीक है, फॉर एवरी फंडामेंटल राइट जो है, वी ऑल्सो हैव सर्टेन काइंड ऑफ limitations that are there. Constitutionally it is written, unlimited freedom to somebody is going to create chaos for somebody else. Is that clear? Think about the traffic lights, traffic rules जो है, red light says stop, green says go, is it orange or amber or whatever it is, ठीक है, it basically says कि मतलब get ready. Helmet is compulsory, seat belt is compulsory. These are rules that are there that are reducing your freedom. ठीक है, you don't get air enough. ठीक है, you have to basically sit with this. But what are these things for? They are there for a reason. That is to prevent accidents. ठीक है, that is to prevent accidents. In the same way, social institutions जो है, they are the traffic systems हमारे समाज के. ठीक है, they are saying कि I'm going to control your power, your freedom, your behavior in such a manner that you are not, like, there is some stability in society. You get the picture, right? There are some rules and norms that you should follow so that everybody is okay with it. Is that clear? So overall, what is it, right? Remember, institutions are basically humanly devised, meaning समाज के लोग अपने आप के लिए वो create किए हुए हैं, right, of rules and norms. Marriage is basically a rules, of what is the rule of marriage? Marriage is basically what? ठीक है, it is basically कि who should have sex with whom का एक rules that is there, right? So and so person with so and so person, and what are the kind of responsibilities for the child with the parents, what are the responsibilities. So we'll take a look at each of these. Marriage jo hai, it is creating nothing. It's an institution that creates rules regarding a few things. Who can marry whom in that society, ठीक है, and the person who marries them has complete sexual legitimacy, ठीक है, कि you're okay to have it, ठीक है, and nobody else. Who cannot marry, ठीक है, who can have sex with whom, all of these things are basically. So essentially, marriage as an institution is there to regulate the sexuality and the sexual competition in that society. If there is no way to regulate the sexual competition amongst males and females in a particular society, it is chaos, it is competition, it is conflict. Most societies में अगर आप देखोगे, brother and sister cannot marry. This is called as incest taboo. एक topic में हम देखेंगे. You understand ना? So all of these things are essentially, humanly devised structures of rules and norms. Okay, in order to shape and constrain individual behavior. Is that clear? So marriage basically reduces conflict, it reduces competition, it reduces jealousy, it reduces aggression by making clear-cut rules, right? If there is no marriage ka rules, imagine, okay, everybody is going to be competing with everybody, and not only till marriage, even after the marriage, because there is no clear-cut rule saying yes, okay, so and so and so and so are basically together, right? Nobody else. You get the picture, right? So society, अगर ऐसा इतना competition है, conflict है, envy है, jealousy है, all these things, society is going to be unstable, cannot survive. Is that clear? There is other institutions as well. ठीक है, so for example, family as an institution. Marriage के बाद, once you get married, you enter into family as an institution. This used to be the initial thought, but today there are many societies जहाँ पे you don't have to go through marriage in order to have a family. But let's say a family. Family as an institution, what does it do? It basically organizes the close relations. Who belongs to whom? Who inherits what property? Who gets to perform what kind of ritual and in which context? Children को care करने के लिए किसका responsibilities है? Who supports the parents in the old ages? You understand, na? When there is a child that is born, ठीक है, who usually raises that particular child? It is the family. ठीक है, when the parents become old, who generally cares for them? Family. So family is not only emotional. It is also economic, it is also social, it is also biological, it is also educational, and so many. अगर पापा जी, ठीक है, let's say, a father dies, who gets the property? Is there a random stranger who's like, okay, so this has been with so and so for so long, ठीक है, अभी मैं लेता हूँ, ऐसा नहीं है, right? Society creates certain kind of rules. ठीक है, in fact, kinship rules होते हैं, inheritance rules होते हैं, economic institutions हो सकते हैं. What are economic institutions? Economic institutions, again, they are humanly devised structures of rules and norms. ठीक है, you know, and they organize कि work कैसे होना है, production कौन करना है, ownership किसका होगा, ठीक है, money, exchange, all of those things are going to be decided. Is that clear? If we hunt today, who gets to have the food? If you grow your food today, who gets to have the food? If you go and buy that particular food today, who gets to have that particular food? Okay, all these things, economic institutions. Okay, imagine somebody else goes and buys the food and then everybody is like, okay, I can also take it. Okay, lawless. Okay, rules and norms are basically important. Okay, political institutions हो सकते हैं. Political institutions does what? Right? They tell ki who should have power, who should have authority, you know, law, punishment, ये सब कैसे होने चाहिए, right? See, for example, ना, you need political institutions. ठीक है, because you know I have played cricket at club level and मतलब school level and college level. So वहाँ पे there is थोड़ा सा organized होता है. It is so much fun to play organized cricket for me, but I cannot play gully cricket. Gully cricket में इतना stress हो जाता है मेरा. I don't know how to play gully cricket because gully cricket में I'm not thinking about me batting या me bowling. I'm thinking कि मुझे मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा. Imagine cricket without an umpire. Imagine cricket without a captain. Imagine cricket without rules. Okay, what happens is complete chaos. I don't enjoy playing it. Okay, so that is why societies basically have governments and police and courts and kings and chiefs and so on. Okay, so for example, अगर आप cricket खेलोगे and you don't have an umpire, ठीक है, your own teammate is going to say कि हाँ ये out if he's the next person to come into bat. You get the picture? ठीक है, so you know it's very very difficult, but you need some kind of rules and order. वो कहाँ से आएंगे? Rules and order and authority. मतलब umpire is basically nothing but authority. ठीक है, that is essentially, you know, just that is political institutions. Religion as an institution, that also humanly devised structures. Humanly devised है ये. ठीक है, religion gives us beliefs, it gives us rituals, it gives us mythology and taboos and symbols and these kind of things. Religion, it is very important because the reason why it is present in every society as an institution is because it does some kind of functions like it reduces the uncertainty. Actually, वो reduce करता है क्या? नहीं, but आपको लग रहा है कि हाँ, because I have prayed, okay, I'm not going to get any bouncers in this year का prelims. At least अंदर लगता है आपको. ये आपको लगेगा कि इतने सारे bouncers are there. In your mind, you will be thinking, अच्छा, you know, only 10 bouncers have come. If I had not prayed, 20 bouncers would have come. Imagine ancient humans. Suddenly there is thunderstorm that is coming in. ठीक है, suddenly there is a disease and disease ना, it spread so quickly, पूरा का पूरा group will essentially die. You don't know why crops are failing. You don't know why today I'm able to hunt and be able to find an animal, catch an animal, and some days I'm not able to. So people have fear. People have uncertainty. People have anxiety. People have stress. Religion is one way, and any form of religion. Okay, any form of religion is something that helps them deal with this uncertainty, with this stress, with this anxiety. Okay, with the death and so on. Understood? एक दिन जब आप एग्जाम लिखने के पहले सोचोगे ना, then you will understand religion. ठीक है, you will really understand what is the function, you know, it is performing, especially in you. You understand ना? Religion also basically is humanly devised structures of rules and norms. It controls your behavior. Does it not? Didn't your religion teach you not to steal? Didn't the religion teach you not to kill? Respect the elders. ठीक है, perform certain kind of rituals on so and so kind of day. Be thankful, be grateful for whatever you get. So religion becomes a moral like a moral control system. So एक definition of, let's say कि मतलब 20-25 words, right, so well explains what institutions are and it applies to every institution. Now you can apply this to legal system and education system, although they are not हमारे syllabus में नहीं है. Sociology में वो पढ़ते हैं. You understand, no? But these are the constructs, theoretical constructs that you can use in order to study the institutions. ठीक है? So overall, if I can say institutions do दो चीजें करते हैं वो. It helps society survive. Okay, by controlling behavior of people. So marriage and उसके behavioral control, family and वहाँ पे क्या expectation, वहाँ का control, and so on. That is why Douglas North जो है, you know, he's saying that it shapes and constrains behavior of the people. Is this clear? Aditya says in gully cricket, if you hit the ball in the house, you are out. No, see, as long as any rules are fine. As long as those rules remain the same. Okay, now in gully cricket, it will be like, no, did it hit? Did it not hit? Okay, there is no one person, right? You know, everybody is the umpire. The person who holds the bat, he's never out. Or so the person who owns the bat is never out. Okay, the persons who are coming to bat after you, they'll always say you are out. Okay, ये होता है कि नहीं? Each institution have different cultures. No. Every culture basically has the same institutions, but the rules might be different. They are humanly devised of rules and norms for that particular society. Is that clear? Marriage, rules and norms. Yeah. So generally, if you understand social institutions are studied from structural perspective and from functional perspective. Structure we will see a little later. See, for example, marriage, what kind of marriage, who marries whom, those kind of elements. But why do these institutions exist in the first place is basically function. वो क्या function करते हैं, वो क्या role निभा रहे हैं. What is role in Hindi? वो क्या role निभा रहे हैं. ठीक है. So why does society create marriage? Why does it create religion? Why does it create politics? Why does it basically create family and economy? Why not just allow complete freedom? ठीक है. If you look at this ना, broad sense में अगर आप सोचोगे, an institution is anything that basically works through rules. ठीक है. It works through customs and traditions. मतलब people actually follow certain expected behavior. Okay? Expected behavior. Acceptable, unacceptable. Clear है. एक स्कूल सोचो आप. School works because there are rules. An institute works because there are rules. You have to come at a fixed time. अगर आप स्कूल पहुंच रहे हो and your class is supposed to be at 9 o'clock and you're reaching at 10:30, ठीक है, you know that you have to go to the principal's office and stand outside there and meet the principal ma'am or the principal sir. मतलब ये है, right? Or you have to, मतलब कुछ ना कुछ तो you have to come in on time. ठीक है, you have to sit in classroom, right? You might even have like assigned seating. You have to wait for the bell to ring. You cannot just leave कि हाँ, I think I've had enough this thing. Like मतलब घर पे आप कर पाओगे, ठीक है, I've learned too much, ठीक है, एक pause play करते हैं, मतलब I'll just pause and then I'll just go walk around and then come back. कर पाओगे क्लास में? नहीं, you have rules. ठीक है, you have to write exams on that particular day. School में you get to say कि I think ma'am I'll come on Sunday 9 o'clock. ठीक है, वो paper ready रखो. कर सकते हो? नहीं. You have to obey your teacher. You have to obey your sir. You have to obey your principal and so on. Rules. Think about a court. The judge gives judgment. ठीक है, lawyers have to argue. There are roles, there are functions. Each person basically plays an important role. Police क्या करते हैं? वो मतलब they enforce करते हैं वो punishment को. ठीक है. So everything follows rules. Marriage as an institution also does the exact same thing. ठीक है, you might think educational institute is an institution, but marriage क्या institution है? Marriage का मतलब वो building है? नहीं. Institution need not be a building. Institution is basically rules. Is that clear? It is humanly devised structures of rules and norms that shape and constrain individual behavior. Marriage has those rules. Who can marry whom? Who cannot marry whom? Okay, who performs those rituals? Who inherits property? What are their responsibilities and so on? Religion also works. Religion as an institution, you might think, acha, this is like some kind of an institution hona chahiye, building hona chahiye, right, and all of that. Actually, religion is again humanly devised structures of rules and norms. रिलीजन कहता है लोगों के लिए, जो उस रिलीजन के बिलीवर्स हैं, वो कहते हैं कि वो सेक्रेड क्या है, कि अच्छा व्हाट इज गुड एंड व्हाट इज बुराई, ठीक है, व्हाट इज सेक्रेड, व्हाट इज सिंफुल, ठीक है, व्हाट आर द रिचुअल्स टू बी परफॉर्म, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ बिहेवियर इज कंसिडर्ड टू बी मॉरल, ठीक है, व्हाट आर द बिहेवियर्स आर कंसिडर्ड टू बी इमोरल, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, क्या करना चाहिए. All those things are basically rules that are actually given. So functionalism jo hai, it is about saying that each of these kind of institutions that give these kind of roles and rules, it also has these kind of roles that they have to perform. What function does something perform is basically functionalism. What function does marriage perform is basically functionalism. What role does, let's say, a family perform is basically functionalism. You understand, no? So whenever you have an institution, always look at it through functionalism. Okay, what is the function? Why are there these kind of rules and regulation that exist? Okay, these institutions exist because they help society survive. Umpires exist because they help people play cricket, enjoy cricket, and finish their cricket game peacefully. Okay, so institutions जो है, they create stability. Institution जो है, वो it creates order, it creates stability, cooperation, continuity, and so on. Is that clear? Take a look at some of these institutions and let's try to break this down. So what are the examples of social institutions? Marriage, family, kinship, political organization, economic organization, religious organization. All of these things, okay, functions we have to study in the social institutions में. ठीक है? But I will go through some of these things in short. ठीक है? Bhumika is role. Yes. So examples of social institutions is what we are saying. Let's take a look at marriage as an institution. Okay, marriage is what we are looking at, right? Marriage regulates what? Marriage regulates sexuality, reproduction, The formation of family. It decides who can marry whom and who cannot marry whom, and certain rules like this is required so that we can reduce the amount of fights and conflicts and envy and jealousy and everything else. थोड़ा सा cooperate भी करेंगे, right? Okay, so that is basically what happens. Family क्या करता है? Family will again, family जो है, it again plays an important role in terms of what? ठीक है? Family does what? In fact, if you can take a look at family, in fact, see, institutions can be formal institutions, it can be informal institutions. Formal institution is basically school. Formal institution is going to be, let's say, your court. Take a formal institutions can be your educational institute and so on. But these are also institutions. Sorry, family, religion, all these things are also institutions. So if I say formal institutions, what I'm actually saying is that it is official, it is written, maybe it is legally recognized, it has a building and so on. ठीक है, schools है, courts है, police है, government है, parliament है, and so on. To join a school, आप कैसे करोगे? ठीक है, it's a formal institution, right? They'll give you a form, you have to get that form, then you have to basically sort of like fill that form, admission कुछ process होंगे, written कुछ rules होंगे. That is a formal institutions. You also have informal institutions. Informal institutions are basically unwritten. जो भी मैंने वहां पे कहा था उसका opposite होगा. ठीक है, ये traditional होगा, ये culturally learned होगा. What could be examples here? ठीक है, family, religion, customs, traditions, all those kind of things. Nobody gives a law saying love your parents. ठीक है, but society is expecting it. You understand ना? Informal institution. Did you have a charter saying कि इस family का rule ऐसा है कि मतलब आप अपने parents को love करोगे, ठीक है, उनको daily ये कहोगे, right? ये सब है नहीं, but it's expected. ठीक है, it's not like the school जहाँ पे you need signatures, you need like papers, ठीक है, you need, so formal and informal, you have to understand this. Let's take a look at family. We were in the middle of family, right? So family का functions क्या है? Family का see मतलब economic functions है, biological functions है, psychological functions है, educational functions है. This is part of your subsequent chapters, but we will take a look at it because we are looking at institution and I don't want it to remain theoretical alone. Is that clear? So look at this. Economic functions क्या है? Family as an economic unit अगर आप देखोगे, ठीक है, family is the one that is responsible for your food, shelter, clothing. ठीक है, if there is a बच्चा and that बच्चा has food, shelter, clothing, why so? Whose responsibility is it? It is family का. ठीक है, these are basic survival needs for that child. When that child is born, for example, मतलब can the baby earn कर पाएगा क्या? Can the baby say कि मेरा money I will basically bring into it? Actually no. ठीक है, the family is expected to support the child economically. एक ज़माने में it was still like 10 years old, एक ज़माने में it is 15 years old, and then एक ज़माने में it's like 20 years old, and UPSC के kids के लिए it is, until they're, they are done with their, until their name is on that rank list and so on. You understand, no? There is division of labor. Division of labor क्या है? Family में आप देखोगे, there is division of labor, meaning there is sharing of work, not just dividing of work. There is a sharing of work. Traditional pattern क्या होता था? It used to be कि many societies में men का responsibility is to go and work outside. अगर कोई बाहर का काम है, okay, वो मर्द को करना है. ठीक है, वो नहीं कर पाएगा कि वो मर्द नहीं है. ठीक है, and women का job क्या है? It is inside the home. If there is something that is wrong at home, ठीक है, generally it is a woman who is considered to be responsible. So back in the day अगर आप जाओगे, men hunt करने के लिए कौन जाता है? It's the man. Okay, बाहर जाके farm करना है, man. Earning of money, it is a man. ठीक है, woman क्या करती थी? Back in the day, cooking, cleaning, gathering, raising children, or to manage that money that the man makes. ठीक है, now though it is basically equal, but there is still a responsibility. It cannot be that every responsibility, is going to be like on each person. You get the picture, right? Sharing, division of labor within the family. Roti, kapda, makan, food, shelter, clothing. Find a way to sort of divide them. Is that clear? Biological functions. In fact, you take a look at this picture. This is what it is today, right? The man basically wears his apron, makes some good food while the wife waits. Okay, when is my husband going to be done with the cooking so that I can, eat my meal, right? This is how the world is today. Okay, moving in that direction. I'm just joking. Okay, okay. Different societies have different norms. Biological functions क्या होंगे? Biological functions of that institution of family. पहला वाला is going to be about sexual relationship, sexual regulation. Okay, so marriage जो है, it provides socially approved, what should I say? It is sexually approved sexual relations. socially approved sexual relations, can't speak today, ठीक है, it is socially approved sexual relationships. There is some sexual activity, okay, which is considered by society to be illegitimate, and if they are married, then we basically say कि it is considered to be okay. Is that clear? ये family के बारे में हम बात कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, family. An important role is to ensure that as long as you're a family, as long as you've entered it through the institution of marriage and you formed a family, ठीक है, sexual needs का satisfaction becomes both of yours. ठीक है, then it is about procreation. Family performs an important role जहाँ पे you're responsible to procreate and continue the species, you know, का continuation, reproduction, having children. कैसे भी कहना है, you understand what it means. अगर reproduction नहीं होगा, then society cannot continue. So you need an institution that basically promotes this. Okay, one day you will realize if two people get married, na, okay, pura society is going to be ki bacha hua, okay, are you there, are you almost there, are you guys trying, kya ho raha hai, kya nahi ho raha hai, I know a doctor, matlab ye to hai, you understand na? So this becomes, so you have an institution called family to essentially provide you the space, okay, to get this done and continue this. Look at this, grandparents must have had some children, then they get married, and look at the kids. Well, teen generation mein, you know, it has basically gone from 2 to many. Psychological functions honge, ठीक है, what are psychological functions? ठीक है, a lot of us basically think that family जो है, it is economic, it is biological, but there is important emotional, you know, roles and functions that are to be played. Emotional support. Nobody understands this better than UPSC students, ठीक है? UPSC students are always, मतलब, you know, वो stress, anxiety, ठीक है, मतलब, you know, always on, मतलब, you know, वो emotionally heightened होते. But it's a family that provides love. It's a family that provides affection. It's a family that provides care. It's a family that provides emotional support. UPSC एक है जहाँ पे, you know, you can be friendly with a lot of people, your classmates and your competitors, but friends नहीं होते, ठीक है? You know, because, you know, in that list may there are only limited sort of names, but you will have friends outside of UPSC. You tend to still maintain that, or, you know, in case the day of the result, or you're having good day, you're having bad day, generally it goes back, आपके लिए कौन है, ठीक है? You know, for my good day and bad day, it used to be my sister, ठीक है? My sister is the one getting a call, or I would basically get a call if you know, and so on. If you fail an exam, what happens? Who comforts you, ठीक है? Usually it is a family. Is that clear? It provides you with a sense of security, right? Feeling of safety, big deal, hota hai, you know, and so on. ठीक है? And basically it's not just for, you know, the children or for the sibling, ठीक है? It could be, for example, you know, उनके children के लिए हो सकता है, if there is somebody who is sick in the family. ठीक है? I had some, you know, generally I've always been away from my family since my boarding school days, ठीक है? But, you know, I had like 3.5 months at home for the very first time, you know, from my childhood, ठीक है? वहाँ से I've never been for that long in my home, but until I basically had like some sort of a episode, ठीक है? मतलब I had a ligament tear, okay, पट्टी वगैरह लगा के, ठीक है? Where do I basically go? ठीक है? Few days I basically stayed by myself, and then to get my food, to get my this, get my that, became very difficult. Then, you know, I basically went home. 3 महीने के लिए I just sat, I ate, ठीक है? I rested, and then I came back, you know, and so on. So who supported security कहाँ पे, right? Tough times, it is basically family. Old age में, hopefully it will be family. पता नहीं कि मतलब तब तक, you know, how the world will change. Guidance के लिए कहाँ पे जाएंगे, right? So in fact, educational functions होते हैं. What you become, right? You know, what you become essentially comes from your family. Family is the first school. You think that pre-KG or nursery or whatever they call it in today's time period is the first school. Nahi. Family is the first school. Enculturation, we saw this yesterday. ठीक है? You're learning from your own culture. You're learning pure culture. Children learn what? They learn language, they learn manners, customs, traditions, values. ये सब कहाँ से आते हैं? Family से आते हैं. Family is your first school. How does a child basically learn to say namaste? ठीक है? स्कूल में वो नहीं सिखाएंगे. ठीक है? Touch your elders' feet. ठीक है? वो स्कूल में सिखाएंगे नहीं. ठीक है? Table manners कैसे खाना है? स्कूल में नहीं सिखाएंगे. ठीक है? How do you respect the guests? जब guest घर के अंदर आएंगे, how do you basically go and greet them, and कौन सिखाएंगे? Is there a class? Is there a subject था क्या? ठीक है? You know, respecting guests, you know, in your class number 8 and class 9, ऐसा नहीं है. ठीक है? Mostly all of these things are learned through family. ठीक है? So before school starts teaching you that formal education, family teaches you many, social behavior kind of things are basically taught at a, क्या कहूँ, मतलब family level में. Is that clear? So you understand this. There are social institutions that we are going to study. ठीक है? Social institutions have certain kind of functions. How social institutions are constraining the behavior, you know, vis-a-vis like how does it basically control you and make you understand what is your role in society, what is acceptable behavior, what is not acceptable behavior. All of those things come through institutions. Is that clear? Look at this. Functions of social institutions. Social institutions are meant to impose constraints, on an individual. Marriage, ठीक है, marriage basically controls sexuality. There's something that we said, right? So क्या कर सकते हैं, कौन किससे marry कर सकता है? Incest taboo is like you can prohibit, people getting married, especially if they are close relation. That is a marriage ka rule, right? That is a marriage ka rule. Why is it important? Because it reduces conflict within the family. It reduces confusion within the family. It reduces, biologically speaking, genetic disorders. ठीक है? Political organization में अगर आप देखोगे, there are some things called as rules, sanctions, ठीक है, punishments. Sanctions जो है, it is rewards for good behavior, it is punishments for what we consider as bad behavior. So for example, अगर एक समाज में एक person follows the law, ठीक है, reward them. If a person breaks the law, punish them. ठीक है? Religion, right? Religious organizations also basically they control the behavior. How? There are taboos, there are forbidden action. ये मत करो. ठीक है? Some religions basically prohibit certain foods. Some religions actually prohibit certain behaviors. Some religions prohibit certain activities. ठीक है? Almost every society basically has some form of that taboo, that forbidden kind of thing. So remember this. ठीक है? Institutions जो है, they don't just help organize society, but they also control behavior. They establish what is acceptable behavior and not acceptable behavior. And that is how society maintains order. Understood? So why are these responsibilities divided in a way in which it is ultimately a patriarchal society? Today, the things are changing. I can tell you, I have an elder sister. She's married. Okay? They divide it in a manner jahan pe. So let's say if it is laundry, okay? So a person who does laundry, and then there is a person who hangs the clothes after the laundry. Okay? So and folds it, I guess. Okay? Similarly, if somebody is basically sort of doing the dishes, if one person is basically cooking, the other person is basically doing the dishes. So you understand, na? So the division of labor basically is a matter of time, and it's a matter of kahan pe hai. Okay? So, but there will be some form of this. Okay? But patriarchy, I think, is changing. In some parts, at least. I don't think it is in every part, and so on. Now, within the social institution, there is an extension of this idea to itna, like the constraint is so much, okay, that it is not just, regulating behavior, it is actually controlling behavior. Okay? And that is going to be called as total institutions. The contribution by a scholar named as Erwin Goffman. Okay? It's a place, total institution is basically, where institutions do not just control one part of your life or just, regulate one aspect of your life, it controls your entire life. And this idea was given by Erwin Goffman, the very famous sociologist. So total institutions kya hai? Okay? Goffman basically used the word total institutions. Okay? He's basically adding the word total here to the institutions to basically say that there is a total sort of constraint. These are basically places jahan pe people are separated from bahar ke society se. Okay? And they are very closely monitored, literally like having like a camera right here or right here, right here, right here. You understand? Na? So everybody's watching you. And you're being strictly monitored, strictly controlled, and you don't have any freedom. Okay? You have to एक रूटीन होगा जो आपको फॉलो करना. यू आर फोर्स्ड टू फॉलो दोस काइंड ऑफ रूटीन्स. इसका वेरी सिंपल मीनिंग ऐसा है कि नॉर्मल लाइफ में अगर आप देखोगे, यू मूव बिटवीन मेनी इंस्टीट्यूशंस. ठीक है? मॉर्निंग में यू विल बी विद फैमिली, डे टाइम में यू विल बी विद स्कूल, ठीक है, और हमारे एज में यू विल बी विद योर ऑफिस, इवनिंग में यू विल बी विद योर फ्रेंड्स, एंड नाइट में यू विल हैव होम. ठीक है? यू कीप चेंजिंग योर सोशल एनवायरनमेंट. बट टोटल इंस्टीट्यूशंस में, ठीक है, टोटल इंस्टीट्यूशन में क्या होता है इज दैट एवरीथिंग हैपेंस इन वन पर्टिकुलर प्लेस. ठीक है? इन दिस इंस्टीट्यूशन यू स्लीप हियर, इन दिस इंस्टीट्यूशन यू ईट हियर, इन दिस इंस्टीट्यूशन यू वर्क हियर, यू फॉलो द रूल्स हियर, ठीक है, एंड यू रिमेन अंडर कंप्लीट सुपरविजन इन दिस पर्टिकुलर प्लेस. इट इज क्लियर. एंड गॉफमैन यहाँ पे कहते हैं कि पीपल इनसाइड टोटल इंस्टीट्यूशंस आर कंप्लीटली कट ऑफ फ्रॉम द आउटसाइड वर्ल्ड. कट ऑफ फ्रॉम द आउटसाइड वर्ल्ड का मतलब क्या है? इट मीन्स यू डोंट नो व्हाट्स हैपनिंग आउटसाइड. Okay, you're completely under the institution and their rules. No freedom or limited freedom, very limited freedom, very limited sort of privacy, and limited contact with outside society. A proper example of this, or a classic example of this thing, is going to be prison. Prison. Jail and prison ka difference pata hai na? So jail is basically, a lot of things happening, but prison is basically a place jahan pe it is, people are going to be there for years. Is that right? Okay, for years. Can a prisoner, if I ask you this particular question, क्या वो prisoner के लिए can the prisoner go whenever he wants, wherever he wants? Can the prisoner eat कि मुझे ये खाना है वो खाना है? Can he eat whatever he wants? Can he sleep whenever he wants? ठीक है? No. ठीक है? अगर हम prisoner बनेंगे या prison जाएंगे, ठीक है? Everybody, everything actually follows this total. It's a total institution. इंस्टीट्यूशन का टाइम टेबल आपको फॉलो करना पड़ेगा, इंस्टीट्यूशन का रूल्स आपको फॉलो करना पड़ेगा, इंस्टीट्यूशनल अथॉरिटी को आपको मानना पड़ेगा, इंस्टीट्यूशनल अटायर को भी आपको पहनना पड़ेगा. इज दैट क्लियर? द डिग्री ऑफ कंट्रोल इन दीज इंस्टीट्यूशंस इज एक्सट्रीमली हाई. ठीक है? सो इफ यू सी दिस हियर, the concept of total institutions refers to places where people are cut off from the outside world. पहला वाला point. Second is with a high degree of control. High degree of control and regulation. High degree of control का मतलब क्या है? ठीक है, इतना control, right? Life becomes highly timetablized or organized. ठीक है, meaning you have to wake up at a particular time, not when नींद खुल रहा है. ठीक है, you're waking up when the bell rings. I'm assuming that the bell rings. Prison में I think there is bell. ठीक है, the food का जो है it is available only at that particular time. Work का जो time है it is only at that particular time. Sleep का जो time है it's only that particular time. Right? Okay. In fact, sometimes even strict hostels feel like a prison. We say this. ठीक है, some of you from this Andhra Telangana schools वगैरह में आपने देखा होगा. ठीक है, when you take a look at your hostel, you have a very different sort of a thought. You think many students basically say I felt like I was in a concentration camp. ठीक है, so sometimes even certain hostels can feel like like prison. ठीक है, maybe you just don't have those prison का clothes नहीं है आपके पास. But you understand now, the point that I'm trying to say here is that imagine your hostel warden basically controlling like a prison when you sleep, when you eat, what you eat, okay, when you go outside, when you should not go outside, when the light should be off, when you should be reading, when you should not be reading, okay, and now multiply that by 100. Now that becomes your total institution. Is that clear? You will feel a complete loss of autonomy. Okay, a complete loss of autonomy. According to Goffman, total institutions are designed to regulate and control the behavior of the inhabitants, and as a result, the individuals within them lose their autonomy. Kya autonomy? There's nothing. Okay, and they're subject to the will of the institution. Okay, loss of autonomy का मतलब है कि loss of personal freedom. ठीक है, individuals stop slowly. Initially, you still think कि मुझे ये खाना है, वो खाना है, मुझे अभी सोना है. Eventually, you will come to a point जहाँ पे you stop making any personal decisions. ठीक है, वो इंस्टीट्यूशन क्या कहेंगे, ड्रेस हम पहनेंगे. इंस्टीट्यूशन डिसाइड्स कि क्या शेड्यूल होना है. इंस्टीट्यूशन डिसाइड करेगा कि कौन सा बिहेवियर होना है. इंस्टीट्यूशन इज गोइंग टू डिसाइड कि क्या किस टाइप का मूवमेंट होना है. राइट, इन आवर मतलब स्कूल टाइम, इफ यू कैन थिंक ना, वी एक्चुअली फॉलोड दोस. राइट, एवरीबडी व्हेन यू आर वॉकिंग, राइट, इफ यू आर फॉर्मली वॉकिंग, एवरीबडी वॉक्स इन अ सिंगल फाइल. लाइफ में कभी होता है ये? राइट, एवरीबडी वॉक्स इन द सेम लाइन. राइट, अभी तो आई डोंट थिंक वी डू, बट वहां पे इट इज लाइक वेरी नॉर्मल. राइट, यू आर एक्सपेक्टेड टू डू सो. Right, army camps अगर आप देखोगे, that is another example. Everybody wears the same uniform. They have the exact same haircut. Although हमारे body school, all of us had the same haircut. ठीक है, we had the same, मतलब कितना भी हम वो उनको कहेंगे ना, it doesn't matter. He has that, ठीक है, and he's going to take it all. As simple as this. We all had the same timing. We all woke up at the same time. We all had tea at the same time. We all, मतलब everything. ठीक है, and the reason why they have all of these things in, let's say, military camps is to reduce the individuality. All of you, once you put on this uniform, you're equal, and to create a sense of discipline in them. Is that clear? So remember, this total institution जो है, it completely reshapes human beings. ठीक है, they want obedient people, they want disciplined people, they want conforming people. कोई भी rules होगा, आप उसको conform करोगे. ठीक है, prisons में ऐसे होते हैं, army this thing में ऐसे होते हैं. Is this clear? Okay, so places of control and regulation, we've just seen this. ठीक है, social institutions, it influences the way you think, you feel, that you behave and so on, right, to a great extent. Okay, so that is that. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. What could be the examples? Look at what is here. In fact, the same slide, next I have it. Okay, it is this. Okay, what do you see here? If you look at this on top here, this side, no? Yeah. Okay, so imagine a very talkative person suddenly entering a monastery. Monastery तो आपको पता है, right? So you must have been to a monastery जहाँ पे it's so silent and people go for peace, meditate वगैरह करेंगे. ठीक है, but let's say that you have a friend who is very talkative, or maybe it is you, talkative, loud, very casual, right? उस type का. That person essentially goes there for a retreat or something, right? Initially, what will it be? The person is going to be like very talkative, very loud, very keeps forgetting कि यहाँ का rules क्या है, but slowly everybody is going to look at that particular person. What are you doing? Okay, it's a silent environment, and then slowly that silent environment is going to silence that person. It's going to make that person meditate. You must have you will all have these kind of friends who are unka volume is like extremely high. They don't know how to whisper at all. But eventually on the 10th day, if you come back on the last day of that particular retreat, right, after being here with these strict rituals, or after some, with limited speech and वो tone वगैरह control करके, and they'll be like whispering. यहाँ से लेके जाओगे also, for a few weeks they'll still be like whispering, and so on. You must have seen these kind of things. The same person actually becomes a lot quieter, disciplined, controlled, meaning total institution. That institution has slowly molded the personality. Okay, this is very similar to what we have discussed earlier. Institution shape behavior, this controls behavior. Okay, they do it a lot more intensely. Other examples that you can see here, right? For example, prisons we have seen, mental hospitals is another one. Okay, mental hospital is another one. So what happens in these mental hospitals? Okay, mental hospitals, मतलब you must have seen ना mental hospital. ठीक है, mental hospital में patients basically are made to follow very strict routines. ठीक है, मतलब उनका therapy है, उनका schedules है, medicine के timings है, heavily medicated है. Some patients basically are heavily medicated in these places, right? Why so is to, I don't know. ठीक है, they say it is to stabilize their behavior, right? Of course, some specialist has to explain that. But doctors and institutional control, वहाँ पे, it's very strong sort of control of the daily activities of the people who are here. Military training camps, so you have seen military camps में क्या होते हैं, right? People are basically the recruits जो होते हैं वहाँ पे, they have to follow very strict discipline, same routine for everybody else. ठीक है, heavy physical training, fixed routine, obedience training. Right? If they say something, they say कि मतलब you have to run 20 rounds, मतलब आपको 20 rounds करना है, वरना there will be consequences. Monasteries is another one that we just said. Okay, these are places where the monks will live उनका religious lives and meditate and so on. Strict religious routines होते हैं. If anybody has actually been to these kind of places, monasteries and all of that, ठीक है, monks will follow what? Prayer schedules होंगे, ठीक है, silence के rules होंगे, ठीक है, rituals होंगे, right? Literally, I've been to these monasteries जहाँ पे I could hear myself breathing. ठीक है, am I breathing too fast? Am I breathing too slow? Am I meditating? मतलब क्या चल रहा है? ऐसा मुझे लगा था. ठीक है, when there are a lot of people who are already there. ठीक है, and a very social person वहाँ पे वो जब जाएंगे, ठीक है, you will actually see कि you become more silent, you become a little detached, you become a little more sort of वो spiritual discipline and so on. ठीक है, boarding school में भी, many college या school वगैरह में students are basically separated from their family, from their home environment. ठीक है, they have to follow a fixed study time. You don't study when you are in the mood to study. You study when the light says so, the bell says so. ठीक है, you have a fixed sleeping time. You have the hostel का जो भी discipline है. ठीक है, so all of these things are, again, well, of course it has a purpose because discipline है, routine है, but the point that it is doing is also controlling behavior, right? So net understand this. Total institution is basically your social institutions but multiplied by 100x intensity. Is that clear? So you're separated from the outside world in these total institutions. You have to follow, or you're made to follow, strict routines. You're constantly under supervision. No personal freedom or loss of personal freedom if you had it outside. Okay, and a complete behavioral control. Okay, so these institutions जो है, they it basically makes people a lot more obedient, makes them all disciplined. It makes them conform to whatever kind of rules are there for that institution. Is that clear? So the total impact is basically what we are saying. Right, you're isolated from society, separated from the normal world. People lose regular contact with the family, friends, outside society, and so on. Right? For example, prisoners, you cannot meet people outside, okay? Or at least not freely. Monks, they are in a different world, right? The outside world is chaotic, it is loud, and all that. Monks basically live in their own world, ताकि they're able to sort of like pursue their spiritual routines. Okay? Strict routines, in fact, okay, that is the next one, right? Strict routine essentially means what? It essentially means that life becomes a lot more highly regulated. Everyday activities become a lot more fixed. ठीक है, मतलब same routine होता है ना. So you wake up in the morning, मतलब you get your tea, then after that exercise, maybe then food. ठीक है, then you have to work for a certain period of time. उसके बाद as soon as you're done, have your dinner, sleep. Everything is fixed. Everything is routine. It reshapes your thinking. It reshapes your behavior. ठीक है, it alters the way people think, feel, and behave. What does that mean? It is reshaping your complete personality. Institutions are going to slowly change your thinking, your emotion, your behavior. All those things are going to come from here. For example, military training say you become a particular type. Okay? Monasteries say you become a particular type. ठीक है, after that, maybe silence is what is more natural to you, and then eventually you also lose your autonomy. ठीक है, loss of autonomy का मतलब है loss of any personal freedom, right? And you come to accept that loss of freedom. You lose that ability to take decisions for yourself. Independent decision नहीं, right? It's all about the bell ringing. Institution decides रूटीन क्या होना चाहिए, institution will decide आपका behavior क्या होना चाहिए, what is good behavior, what is bad behavior, what is approved behavior. ठीक है, when you move, when you appear, how you appear, all those things are going to be decided by this institution. So total institutions essentially try to create a obedient, disciplined and conforming member of society. ठीक है, individuals will basically say कि this essentially makes you all uniform. It reduces your individuality. Is this clear? So, okay. So what have we seen in this entire topic? If I can just give a quick summary. What have we seen here, right? We saw institutions. Institutions are basically what? Social institutions, not total institutions. Social institutions are basically humanly made systems, and they're made of certain rules, certain norms, which shape and control behavior, or they shape and regulate behavior. And we connected this to the kind of institutions we have in our syllabus. 6 of them we have in our syllabus: marriage, family, kinship, economic, political, religion. These are the institutions. Then we saw the functionalist view. Whenever you have an institution, the institution exists because society needs them, right? Marriage is required because it is playing an important role in society. It is regulating sexuality. Family hai, it is supporting, it is socializing people. Religion hai, it reduces your fear, stress, anxiety. Politics hai, it maintains order. Economy hai, survival ke liye, how to share and distribute resources ke liye. And so institutions jo hai, it helps society in a way to make it more stable, to keep it organized, to keep it more cooperative and less conflicted. You understand, right? Then we basically took an example. Let's say, I think family is the one that we took a look at, right? Family also exists because it performs so many different kind of roles, so many different kind of functions. कौन से functions? Economic functions थे, जहाँ पे food, shelter, clothing, family का function है. Biological functions है, meaning sexual needs को satisfy करना और reproduction वगैरह करना is family का function. Psychological functions, emotional support for the members of that particular family. Educational functions, right? Enculturation. ठीक है? You speak in a particular language, ठीक है? That is cool. Right? But the way in which you speak it, the tone in which you speak it, kitna respect, kitna, matlab ye sab, it basically, people don't blame the school for it. People blame whom? Mom, dad. You understand, na? So it plays an education ka role as well. Okay? So family jo hai, it is, an institution that performs many of these kind of functions. Okay? Family is the first school, right? Always remember this. It is the first school. Is this clear? And then we essentially saw total institution. Total institution, we basically saw Erwin Goffman and his total institution. He is basically saying it is an institution, but instead of regulating, instead of shaping, it is completely controlling. Okay, what could be some examples of total institutions? Prisons, military camps, monasteries the, boarding schools the, mental hospitals the, where people are basically what? They're isolated from the rest of society. They are being strictly not regulated, they're strictly controlled. Okay? And they're forced to essentially follow certain routines that are set by the institution. Okay? And eventually what you will see is that it completely changes their personality, their thinking, their emotions, their behavior, and so on. Is this clear? All of these things are what we have seen in your social institution. So a quick recap is done. If I can now give you a quick quiz. Which or who defined institutions as humanly devised structures of rules and norms, ... Option A, and again, you have to give me all in one message, guys. Please understand this. A, Malinowski. B, Radcliffe Brown. C, Douglas North. And D, Durkheim. Question number 2. Which of the following is a social institution? Okay, marriage, A. B, family. C, religion. D, all of the above. Question number 3. According to functionalists, institutions exist mainly because they A, create confusion. B, help society survive. C, increase conflict. D, remove culture. मतलब इसको एलिमिनेट करके भी आप आंसर तक पहुंच जाओगे, होपफुली. Incest taboo means dash. Incest taboo means dash. gave the concept of total institutions? First name dash, last name dash. That's it. I'll give you 20 seconds. These are all the theoretical components that you need and you will use this a lot. ठीक है, मतलब इसका जो vocabulary है and ये क्या है आपको understand करना है, and the kind of vocabulary that you receive from it you will be using in expressing and studying the other kind of institutions as well. The right answers are, and I'm going to take a look at some of your answers and tell you if it is right. Who defined institutions as humanly devised structures of, rules and norms and so on, right? So the answer is option C, Douglas North. Option C, Douglas North. Which of the following is social institution? The answer was all of the above. Option D, all of the above. Next is, according to functionalists, take institutions exist mainly because they do what? Option B, by elimination आपको पहुंचना चाहिए, ठीक है, help society survive. Right? It brings certain kind of rules and regulations to society, all the members, stability होगा, order होगा, and so on. The next one is good, ठीक है. Incest taboo means what? And there was a dash. It is prohibiting sexual relationship between close relatives. Okay. And who gave the concept of total institution? This is the last question. ठीक है. This is Erving Goffman. First name, last name. Tell me scores. Tell me your scores. JS 3, Aditya 3, SRB 5 out of 5, excellent. ASB 4 out of 5, PY 5 out of 5, Tejasvi 4 out of 5, Kishan 5 out of 5, Ankit 4, 4 out of 5, GN, SG 3, HK 4, LD 4, PS 4 out of 5, Prakash 4 out of 5, AG 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, one spelling mistake by SR, okay, Lakshita 4, 4.5, didn't remember the first name, take it, got it. SKS is 4, Kiran is 5, 4 for VK, BGR, KD, 4.5, wrote Kaufman only, not the Erving. Okay, got it. So we are basically in these 2.1, 2.2. These are basically the theoretical sort of constructs and, those kind of aspects. And then we go into, the marriage, family, kinship, economic, political, religion. Okay, we saw cultural relativism today. Okay. Generally, when you want to write answers, again, get my feedback too and make a lot of mistakes. Okay, but keep writing volume. Okay, keep writing a lot of volume when you're writing these kind of answers. Okay, so it is important because when you start writing now, don't be a perfectionist. When you are a perfectionist, right, you will not be able to put in the good quantity. And with quantity, jahan pe you're constantly thinking that these are my strengths, let me try to improve on them and let me try to do more of them. And these are my areas to improve. Let me try to sort of fix some of these kind of issues in this assignment, the next assignment, and so on. And generally, I'll give you only doable areas to improve. So there is a particular theme कि इस assignment में, and you're going to be writing 300 pages, 400 pages, 600. ये बहुत सारे लिखोगे, एक assignment में इतने लिखने वाले हो. So what is going to happen is that you have 2 to 3 things that you're working on. Let me try to conclude better. Let me try to conclude better. Let me try to conclude better is going to be. So 2 to 3 things is going to be work. Agar 15 things hai, of course, it's not, you cannot improve on any of them. Okay. So that is that. So don't be a perfectionist, but you have to start. And all of these students, all of these kind of answers, and most of these answers that I'm basically showing you are all students who made it in ek attempt. Ek means. Okay. So you will also get that one chance, but yahan pe aapko volume rakhna hai. ठीक है, फाउंडेशन के टाइम पीरियड में आई एम श्योर यू हैव 100 अदर थिंग्स टू डू, है कि नहीं? हु डजंट, राइट? बट यू जस्ट ट्राई टू सी कि कितना वॉल्यूम आप कर पा रहे हो. जितना आप कर पाओगे उतने लोगों को आप पीछे छोड़ोगे. ठीक है, कितना वॉल्यूम आप लिख पाओगे उतने लोगों को आप पीछे छोड़ोगे. एंड दैट्स एग्जैक्टली व्हाट यू शुड डू. गेट अहेड. Right? And when you go to the next stage, I want you to feel कि, what? It doesn't matter if you're a ranker. It doesn't matter if you've been to multiple interviews. It doesn't matter if you have written multiple mains. ठीक है, I have arrived. ठीक है, आप मुझसे तो आपको compete तो करना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, I am not ceding an inch. ठीक है, I am coming to really compete. मतलब वो एक थोड़ा सा competitive zeal होना चाहिए. एक a little bit of an ego. You can do anything. ठीक है, बट एंथ्रो में बीट करना, ठीक है, वहां पे तो मतलब आई एम गोना पुट अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग फाइट, ऐसा आपको एक माइंड में लेके आना है. लेट्स टेक अ लुक जनरली व्हाट इज द स्ट्रक्चर हियर. ठीक है, डेफिनेशन, ओके, एंड एग्जांपल्स, एडवांटेजेस, एक्सेप्शंस, कंक्लूजन. गुड गुड. ठीक है, सो द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ कल्चरल रिलेटिविज्म, व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन? Okay, cultural relativism. Okay, the concept of cultural relativism is given by a famous anthropologist, Franz Boas. Good scholar highlighted. It refers to the attitude that the culture should be studied objectively without any prejudices. Good, underlined as well. Cultural relativism emerged in opposition to the earlier concept of ethnocentrism, like practiced by E.B. Tyler and other anthropologists, where other cultures are evaluated based on one's own culture, which results in demarcating cultures as superior and inferior. In fact, like एक sentence में to make all the important points is a pretty big deal. ठीक है, it's a skill that requires a little bit of effort. Inferior, superior, E.B. Tyler, right? All of these and history. In fact, you can even say कि historical background कह के आप एक subheading भी यहाँ पे create कर सकते हो. So that is good, right? Examples and a little bit of indentation. Maybe itna indentation may not be required. Maybe like 0.5 centimeter or 1 centimeter का indentation would be appropriate. ठीक है, so Irulas of Nilgiris, ठीक है, youth dormitories. So different batches के लिए different examples. Fine, but you see कि कितना आप लिख पाओगे. But don't assume that they know already. So if I mention it, they should be able to understand. उनको पता होगा, but they want to see whether you know. है कि नहीं, right? Does the student know exactly how this is ethnocentric? Yeah, this is cultural relativism. Are they able to look at it from that particular lens? आपको उसको prove करना पड़ेगा कि yes, I know it. That is your responsibility. ठीक है, so it cannot be a touch and go. Again, in fact, this has been broken down into ethnocentric. लोग कैसे इसको देखेंगे, right? Cultural relativism से हम कैसे देखना है, right? So very well, मतलब this is good structuring. This is good organization of the thought. ठीक है. Advantages, what could be? Hence, cultural relativism helps us understand the reason for existence of a culture in that particular society or a culture trait in that particular society. Okay, this results in peaceful coexistence of various cultures by making India a cultural mosaic of cultures, a bit of diversity of cultures. It's good bringing it back to the Indian context. Okay, not required here, but still, a good way to sort of analyze. Okay, so good. Exceptions, however, there are some limitations to applicability of cultural relativism, right? So this is about the fact that we should not have absolute cultural relativism under anything. Try to bring in some important keywords here: powerful groups, dominant groups trying to defend, take their practices under or behind cultural relativism. Okay, so basic dignity, basic sort of human rights is important. To sum up, cultural relativism as a concept revolutionized the entire approach of anthropology by enabling anthropologists to not only provide the ethic view, but also emic view of understanding cultures, thereby making anthropology a holistic study. First of all, A circle नहीं चाहिए. And ethic and emic is something that you will see a little later. ठीक है, ethic का मतलब है, so emic essentially means inside view, ethic का मतलब है outsider का view. Anyway, it's fine. ठीक है, and yeah, so I'll tell you about short notes as well. So eventually you will be making these kind of short notes. Many of you already been asking. Okay, remember this is your class 1, class 2 of Socio-Cultural Anthropology. Okay, and give it a little bit of time. एक हफ्ते के लिए, once you listen, you get a feel for it, and then I will tell you, and then you will remain busy. Okay, I'll give you there is a particular color coding that you have to do. Okay, so if I basically tell you in the next phase में, ठीक है, I found that let's say some examples are a little low, so थोड़ा सा more illustrate करते हैं. Right, all you got to do is go through your blues once again. Okay, you can go through your, let's say, scholars. I just did not feel that you were able to use the names of the scholars and the contributions while you're using their ideas. Okay, so you will basically revise everything, but you will look at the red ek aur bar before you write your next mock, and so on. Right, so for some important information, I'll just tell you, and then you'll be making something like this. ठीक है, एक बार ये सब बनाओगे तो मतलब वो subject will become it's equivalent to reading it 10 times. It is equivalent to understanding it. मतलब you're literally reading, understanding, organizing, okay, and thinking कि how do I basically put it, and so on. So you can see these kind of things. ठीक है, the web of social relationships. We saw this in the beginning of the class today, right? So like this. Right, so I'll tell you, and this is the exact format in which I want it. Okay, one side will be thinner, one side will be fatter, because this is like your prompt. It is like a question that you're asking yourself, like a those flashcards जो होते हैं, but of course we can't have इतने सारे flashcards like this. Okay, so this is going to be in like one sheet, but you can pack as many as possible and so on. Okay, and again, a lot of assignments will come your way. Okay, lots and lots of मतलब बहुत busy रहोगे. ठीक है, so you can see these are all things that students have made, and again this not this one, this edge is something that I just don't know how to control. but like this I will get you these sheets जहाँ पे you will make these and then be able to मतलब you have to write, ठीक है, you know, volume is basically what is required. Just try to see, just outcompete others in terms of the volume, and I will provide you every answer that you write. I will actually provide you with feedback because I feel this is the best ROI that I get. Okay, at the end of the day, my success depends on your success. Okay, so here I'm basically trying to unearth a gem. Okay, there will be some 10% of you guys are extremely committed, more than what I could even imagine. Okay, the rest of you will get there, right? Drive and so on. Okay, I think hopefully, you know, every batch may you'll have 60, 70, 80, 90% of the students, right? So I'm hoping that, you know, you will go through and put this kind of effort. But if you put in this effort, if I guide you here, okay, वो पहला वाला mains जब आता है ना, you already come in with a huge lead. Okay, so this is something I'm just trying to get you guys to mentally prepare. Okay, this is basically what you've got to do. Okay, and each and every one of your assignment should be 180, 200, 300, these kind of number of pages. Is that clear? And you will be writing quality answers. Of course, you're not, you know, going to be capable of judging these kind of answers at this particular moment, but eventually you're going to get to the point jahan pe this is going to be the kind of works that you do. You do it, okay, nothing can stop you from a rank. Okay, nothing can actually stop you from a rank in your very first meets. Right, most of my students, if you see, they are in the rank list, okay, and they are in the rank list because of their optional. The paper jahan pe they took the biggest lead was their optional. It's easily possible because optional mein na wo variation is going to be a lot more. Certain areas mein it is going to be clustered marks, yahan pe to it is going to be a lot more. Use it, okay? You cannot do justice to everything, but you know wo ye 3-4 mahine ke liye one thing that I would suggest is anthro ko to de-emphasize mat karo, deprioritize mat karo, because while I'm here and pushing you, you will get a lot done. Okay, once I'm gone, everything becomes on you and your motivation and your this thing and so on. It becomes a lot harder. So do it. ये 4 महीने के लिए कुछ यहाँ पे मत backlogs तो मत रखो. ठीक है, everything that you write, I'll go through. Within the, you have to follow the instructions. You have to follow the deadlines. ठीक है. So that's it I have for today. ठीक है, चलो ठीक है, bye bye.